In February 1933, a German immigrant named Otto Henze sold his first fishing reel out of a rented third-floor loft at 492 North 3rd Street in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The most expensive reel sold for $2.48. Over the next 70 years, Penn Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company grew into the dominant force in saltwater fishing, holding over 1,000 IGFA world records. In January 2003, the Henze family sold it. That sale was the first of 5 in under 16 years. Otto Henze left Germany in 1922 at age 25 and arrived in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He took a job as a machinist at the Ocean City Reels Company. 10 years later, in 1932, Henze left Ocean City Reels and started his own company. He rented a third-floor loft at 492 North 3rd Street in Philadelphia from a general machinist firm called William Schmitz & Company. He named his company Penn Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company. The timing was brutal. The Great Depression was in full swing. Unemployment across the United States had climbed above 25%. Henze launched anyway. In February 1933, Penn made its first recorded sale to the Miller Auto Supply Company of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Miller purchased 3 reels, a Seahawk for $1.21, a Bayside for $1.93, and a Long Beach for $2.48. Penn's total sales for that first year came to $7,526. Henze priced his reels at half the cost of his competitors, while matching every feature they offered. By 1936, 4 years after opening, his gross sales had increased tenfold. Also in 1936, Penn introduced a reel called the Senator. It was built to fight the largest game fish in the ocean, and it changed saltwater fishing permanently. In 1942, Penn Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company outgrew its third-floor loft on North 3rd Street. Henze moved the entire operation to a larger facility on West Hunting Park Avenue in Philadelphia's Nicetown Tioga neighborhood. That address would remain Penn's manufacturing home for the rest of the century. The move came at a complicated moment. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, and the United States entered World War II. Penn redirected a portion of its manufacturing capacity for wartime production. Construction of new reels stopped entirely because the raw materials were needed for the war effort. To keep their customers engaged, Penn offered a free tube of reel lubricant to any angler who wrote in and requested one. The war ended in 1945. Americans came home, found jobs, and had money to spend on leisure for the first time in over a decade. Fishing boomed. Penn was positioned directly in the middle of it. Otto Henze did not live to see how large Penn would become. In 1948, he died suddenly. He was 56 years old. His wife, Martha Henze, was 39 years old when Otto died. She made a decision that almost no woman in American business made at that time. She stepped in and took over as president of Penn Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company. She did not hand the company to a male executive, she ran it herself. Martha was not a figurehead, she was an active angler who understood saltwater fishing from personal experience. In 1951, she caught a 613-pound bluefin tuna in Nova Scotia. Her knowledge of what anglers needed on the water directly shaped the company's product decisions throughout her tenure. Under Martha's leadership, Penn expanded from a respected American brand into an international one. The company sold reels in England, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, France, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Martha ran Penn as president until 1963, 15 years in total. In 1963, her son Herbert Henze took over as president, and Martha became chairwoman of the board. She held that position until she retired in 1977. Henze. Leadership defined an era. Herbert Henze had grown up inside the company. He served as president for 39 years, from 1963 until his retirement in December 2002. He was Penn's last family president, and his tenure shaped the company's direction. Last of the family presidents. The records Penn set during this era were not incremental. They were dominant. In 1955, every single one of the 5 new IGFA world records set that year, black drum, amberjack, yellowtail, wahoo, and white pointer shark, was set using a Penn reel, all 5 in the same year. By 1959, Penn was manufacturing 77 different reel models. The company had expanded far beyond the 3 models Otto sold out of his loft in 1933. In 1961, Penn introduced its first spinning reel. It was called the Spinfisher 700. Spinning reels were simpler to operate than conventional reels, and they opened saltwater fishing to a new generation of anglers who had never fished before. Spinfisher changed how people fished. In 1966, Penn went further, and the company introduced the International Series, a line of reels built specifically for big game tournament fishermen targeting the largest, most powerful fish in the ocean. The Internationals featured an anodized gold finish and the fishing world's first preset drag control. They became the standard reel for offshore big game fishing worldwide. International set the standard. In 1979, a fisherman named Frank Mundus caught the largest mako shark ever landed on rod and reel off the coast of Long Island, New York. The shark weighed 1,080 pounds. Mundus used a Penn reel to do it. Mundus was the real-life inspiration for the character Quint in the 1975 film Jaws, Mako, and a moment in fishing history. The records kept coming. By 1990, Penn reels had been used to set over 700 IGFA world records. By 1997, that number had grown past 800. By 2004, Penn reel models held over 1,400 IGFA world records, more than any other manufacturer on Earth. Records piled up year after year. The Philadelphia plant on West Hunting Park Avenue was the engine behind all of it. At its peak, the facility employed 270 workers. The company generated annual revenue of approximately $50 million. The broader US fishing tackle industry was producing $2.1 billion in sales per year, and Penn was one of its most recognized names. Philadelphia was the heart of production. The manufacturing process at the Hunting Park Avenue plant was precise and labor-intensive. Intricate 3-inch geared spindles were cut from stainless steel on 18-foot lathes. Parts were machined from forged aluminum at rows of computerized equipment and then hand-assembled on the floor. Every precision gear that went into a Penn reel was made in-house at that plant by workers who had often spent their entire careers there. Precision was built into every reel. Penn was not a corporation managed from a distant headquarters. It was a neighborhood manufacturer. Many of the 270 workers on Hunting Park Avenue had fathers who worked there before them. Some employees had joined straight out of high school and never left. That began to change in the early 2000s. By 2003, the global fishing reel market had shifted. Shimano, a Japanese manufacturer, had spent decades building a competing line of saltwater reels and had taken significant market share from Penn in the mid-range price category. Cheaper reels from China were flooding the lower end of the market. Penn's cost structure, built on American wages, American materials, and American facilities, could not match those prices on every product line. The pressure showed up first in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. Penn operated a second manufacturing facility in the town of Heggins, located at 218 Dell Road. The Heggins plant had been open since 1968. It employed workers who produced Penn's high-volume spinning reels, the models that sold at lower price points and in the largest quantities. In March 2005, Penn announced it would permanently close the Heggins facility. Approximately 85 employees received notice that their jobs were ending. The layoffs were rolled out from May through July of 2005. Penn's chief financial officer at the time, David Martin, explained the decision plainly. Pricing pressure from overseas competition made it impossible to continue operating the Heggins facility at a cost-competitive level. The work that had been done in Heggins would be divided. Some operations moved to Philadelphia, and the rest were shipped to manufacturers in China. Penn's national sales manager later described the specific math behind the overseas shift. To keep producing the Penn SSG spinning reel in the United States, the company faced three options. First, manufacture it domestically and lose $3 million per year. Second, pull the product from the market entirely. Third, move production overseas and price it competitively. Penn chose the third option. Penn employees at Heggins were given a severance package. Workers with more than 20 years of service received 8 weeks of pay. Penn submitted a trade petition to the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry so that displaced employees could qualify for additional government-funded job training and career transition support. Many of those 85 workers had never looked for a job before. Some had worked at the Heggins plant since graduating high school. The closure of Heggins did not just eliminate jobs, it ended careers that had been built inside a single building on Dell Road for 30 years. After Heggins closed, the Philadelphia plant kept running. The high-end models, the International Series and the Senator Series, continued to be made by hand at Hunting Park Avenue. The lower-priced product lines were now being manufactured in China and shipped back to the United States under the Penn name. The brand was intact, the records were intact, the Philadelphia plant was still running. But the company that Otto Henser had built on the principle of making every part in-house in Philadelphia was no longer doing that, and the man who had held the company together through all of it, Herbert Henser, had already left. Herbert retired in December 2002. 1 month later, on January 3, 2003, the Hense family's 71-year ownership of Penn Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company officially ended. On January 3, 2003, Penn Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, was sold to 2 fishing tackle wholesalers for an undisclosed amount. The first buyer was Sea Striker Incorporated. Sea Striker was based in Morehead City, North Carolina. It was known for its Bill Fisher line of rods and terminal tackle, and it was the parent company of Star Rods. Sea Striker was owned by 3 people: Dick Henry, Phyllis Henry, and Al Brister. The second buyer was Master Fishing Tackle. Master Fishing Tackle was based in Carson, California. It imported rod and reel combos sold throughout the United States. Its owner was a man named Jerry Rodstein. Together, Sea Striker and Master Fishing Tackle purchased all shares held by the Hense family, the shares that had been in that family for 71 years. Penn's corporate headquarters stayed in Philadelphia. The company continued to operate 3 manufacturing facilities in Pennsylvania. Kevin Martin was named the new Chief Executive Officer of Penn. Martin had spent the previous year at Penn as Chief Operating Officer. Before that, he had served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Spalding Sports Worldwide. Sea Striker and Master Fishing Tackle were not large corporations. They were wholesalers. Their combined infrastructure was built for distributing tackle, not for financing and scaling a manufacturer of Penn's size. The partnership lasted less than 4 years. The first sale had barely settled before the second one arrived. In January 2007, Shakespeare Fishing Tackle acquired Penn Fishing Tackle Manufacturing Company for an undisclosed amount. Shakespeare was based in Columbia, South Carolina. Shakespeare's president at the time was Scott Hogsett. Hogsett stated publicly that Penn products had been the gold standard for offshore, inshore, and surf fishing for 75 years, but that the Penn name had lacked the resources to grow and develop its markets. That last part mattered. It was an admission that the previous 4 years under Sea Striker and Master Fishing Tackle had not produced the investment Penn needed. Shakespeare was not an independent company. Shakespeare was a division of K2 Inc. K2 Inc. was a publicly traded consumer products company, headquartered in Carlsbad, California. Its portfolio included Shakespeare, Pfluger, and Stearns in the marine and outdoor segment. It also owned K2 skis, Völkl, Marker bindings, Ride snowboards, and Rawlings baseball equipment. Fishing was one of more than 20 product categories K2 managed simultaneously. Penn had gone from a 71-year family operation, where every decision was made by someone named Henze, to a line item inside a diversified sporting goods company that also sold ski boots and baseball bats. The second sale closed in January 2007. The third sale came 8 months later. In August 2007, the Jarden Corporation acquired K2 Inc. for approximately $1.2 billion. K2's entire portfolio transferred with the deal, including Shakespeare, and inside Shakespeare, Penn. Jarden was a conglomerate based in Rye, New York. Its brand portfolio included Yankee Candle, Crock-Pot, Coleman Camping Gear, Ball Mason Jars, and Mr. Coffee. Penn was now owned by the same parent company that made scented candles and home canning equipment. Jarden had also made a separate acquisition 4 months earlier, in April 2007. It purchased Pure Fishing Inc. for approximately $400 million. Pure Fishing was the parent company of fishing brands Berkley, Abu Garcia, and Fenwick, Penn's direct competitors in freshwater and light saltwater tackle. With K2's acquisition complete, Jarden folded Penn into the Pure Fishing portfolio. Penn was placed alongside Abu Garcia, Berkley, Fenwick, and Shakespeare inside a single fishing tackle division. The logic was consolidation, one division managing all the brands, sharing distribution networks, sharing manufacturing infrastructure, sharing sales teams. For Penn, it meant the company that had operated independently on Hunting Park Avenue since 1942 was now sharing a corporate parent with brands it had competed against for decades. The Philadelphia plant kept running through all of it. The workers kept showing up. The reels kept getting made. Penn continued releasing new products and continued winning awards. In 2006, Penn's International Torque Reel was named the America Sport Fishing Association's Saltwater Reel of the Year. In 2015, Penn launched the Clash Spinning Reel, which took home Best in Show in the saltwater reels category at ICAST, the fishing industry's largest annual trade show. The brand was performing, the product was still respected, but the decisions about Penn's future were no longer being made in Philadelphia. They were being made inside Jarden's headquarters in Rye, New York. The fourth sale came in April 2016. On December 14, 2015, Newell Rubbermaid announced it would acquire the Jarden Corporation. The deal closed on April 15, 2016. The final price was $15.4 billion. The combined company was renamed Newell Brands. Newell Brands was enormous. The acquisition created a global consumer goods company with annualized sales of $16 billion and a portfolio spanning more than 100 product categories. Its brands included Papermate, Sharpie, Rubbermaid, Coleman, Graco Baby Products, Calphalon Cookware, First Alert, and Yankee Candle. Penn was one brand inside that list of over 100. Pure Fishing, the division containing Penn, was generating approximately $556 million in net sales annually as of 2017. It was a meaningful business, but inside a $16 billion corporation, it represented less than 4% of total revenue. Newell Brands had taken on significant debt to complete the Jarden acquisition. By 2018, the company was under direct pressure from activist investors, including Starboard Value, to cut costs and raise cash by selling off non-core assets. Newell's leadership responded by identifying a list of businesses to divest. Pure Fishing was on that list. Penn was going to be sold for the 5th time. On November 7, 2018, Newell Brands signed a definitive agreement to sell Pure Fishing to Sycamore Partners. Sycamore Partners was a private equity firm based in New York City. It specialized in consumer, distribution, and retail-related investments and managed approximately $10 billion in assets. The gross proceeds from the sale were $1.3 billion. Pure Fishing's portfolio at the time of the sale included 18 brands: Abu Garcia, All Star, Berkeley, Chubb, Fenwick, Grays, Hardy, Hodgman, Johnson, JRC, Mitchell, Penn, Pfluger, Sabile Shakespeare, Spiderwire, Stren, and Ugly Stick. Penn was one name on that list. Sycamore Partners was not buying Penn by itself. It was buying a portfolio of 18 fishing brands, and Penn came with it. Sycamore Partners completed the acquisition on December 21st, 2018. Penn had now been sold 5 times since January 2003. The 5 sales spanned 15 years and 11 months. The company that Otto Henze built with $7,526 in first-year sales was last valued as part of a $1.3 billion transaction. Each sale had moved Penn further from the world it was built in. The first sale, in 2003, transferred it from a family to 2 wholesalers. The second, in January 2007, placed it inside a publicly traded sporting goods conglomerate. The third, 8 months later, in August 2007, buried it inside a household goods giant that also sold candles. The fourth, in April 2016, moved it into a $16 billion corporation where it generated less than 4% of total revenue. The fifth, in December 2018, handed it to a private equity firm that specializes in extracting value from consumer brands. As of 2023, Pure Fishing remains Penn's parent company under Sycamore Partners ownership. Penn's headquarters are no longer in Philadelphia. After Pure Fishing absorbed Penn into its corporate structure, the headquarters relocated to Spirit Lake, Iowa, Pure Fishing's home base. The Philadelphia plant on West Hunting Park Avenue still operates. It employs over 300 workers. It still manufactures the Senator series and the International series, the 2 product lines that remain American-made. The rest of Penn's more than 200 reel models are now manufactured overseas, primarily in China. In 2022, at the ICAST trade show, Penn's new Authority reel won the New Product Showcase Best in Class Award for saltwater fishing reels. The brand still competes, the Philadelphia plant still runs, the Senator still catches fish. The reel Otto Henze designed in 1936 is still in production, made by hand in the same city, by workers who have no idea that the company their paychecks come from has changed hands 5 times since the last Henze walked out the door. If this documentary on Penn reels added something to your day, like this video and subscribe, only if it was worth your time. In April 1957, a small engineering company in the French Alps gave its flagship product a number. It called it the Mitchell 300. By 1970, the factory was producing 12,000 reels every single day. By 1971, the 20 millionth reel had rolled off the line. By the time French production ended, anglers worldwide had purchased over 30 million Mitchell 300s. The company that built all of them declared bankruptcy in 1981. To understand how that happened, the story starts not with a reel, but with a clock. The city of Cluses, France, had been making clocks since 1720. By 1848, the craft had grown so central to the region that a royal decree established a dedicated school, the École d'Horlogerie, to train the next generation of precision engineers. Louis Carpano was among its first graduates. After training in Geneva, he returned to Cluses and formed a manufacturing partnership in 1868. The workshop made watch gears and precision components. In 1902, Carpano handed the factory to his nephew, Constant Carpano. During World War I, the factory stopped making clocks and began producing munitions. After the war, it returned to watch parts. Constant Carpano died in 1927. His son-in-law, Charles Pons, inherited the business. Pons renamed it Carpano and Pons. Under Pons, the company expanded well beyond clockmaking. Carpano and Pons held patents on one of the first electric shavers, a cigarette lighter shaped like a lipstick, taximeters, electric power meters, and electric windshield wipers. Every one of those products was built on the same foundation: small, precise, interlocking mechanical parts. In the mid-1930s, Pons hired Maurice Jacquemin, a top graduate of the French National Mechanics College in Paris. In the mid-1930s, two French fishing tackle companies needed help. La Canne à Pêche and Pecos both had round-bodied reel designs that worked, but not well enough. They contracted Carpano and Pons to mechanically refine them. Carpano and Pons was not a fishing company. It built precision instruments, but the contract forced its engineers to learn, from the inside, exactly how a fishing reel worked and exactly where it failed. Maurice Jacquemin worked on the contracted reels alongside Pons. At the same time, he began developing something else entirely, a reel he believed could cast a lure at greater distances with precision and recover the line without tangling. No reel on the market in the 1930s could do both reliably. Jacquemin worked on the design for years. The result was a marked departure from the reels of its day in both mechanics and appearance. Traditional reels held the spool perpendicular to the rod. Jacquemin's reel placed the spool parallel to the rod, facing forward. Line peeled off the front of the spool freely during a cast, with no resistance from a rotating drum. A wire arm, the bail, swept the line back onto the spool on retrieve. The mechanism was entirely new. Carpano and Pons began production of the CAP reel, the contracted design, in 1937. In March 1939, both the CAP and the new Mitchell reel entered test run production. They were pilot reels, not yet for sale. In 1942, the second version of the Mitchell was produced for sale in France. The third version began production in 1946. World War II had compressed the timeline, but it had not stopped it. While Europe was being rebuilt, Carpano and Pons was building reels. In 1948, Carpano and Pons closed the Cluses National School of Watchmaking and converted the building into the new Mitchell manufacturing plant. The school had stood for 100 years. The decision to demolish its function and replace it with a fishing reel factory was not sentimental. It was a business calculation. The reel was already outselling everything else the company made. A patent application was filed on July 28, 1948. The patent was granted on May 24, 1950, under number 969,584. When the time came to name the reel, Carpano and Pons intended to call it Michel. They discovered that the name was already used and patented, so they gave the reel an American-sounding name that was very in vogue at the time. The precise origin of that Americanized name has never been settled. The Mitchell corporate history states that Charles Pons named the reel in honor of his brother, Mitchell. The Mitchell Reel Museum's research attributes the name to Maurice Jacquemin's son Michel. French law prohibited the use of proper names as product brand names, which required the anglicization to Mitchell. Both accounts exist, neither has been conclusively verified. Export began in 1946. Jules Gumprich owned Impeco, a Paris-based import-export company with close ties to Carpano and Pons. Impeco moved goods, and it had the infrastructure to get a French reel into the hands of foreign distributors. Jules Gumprich had a brother, Otto Gumprich, who owned Charles Garcia and Company in New York City. Jules sent one of the reels across the Atlantic. Tom Lenk worked at Charles Garcia and Company. He saw the reel and recognized what it was. Lenk had worked for Garcia since 1938, returned from the war, and took over running the company alongside Otto Gumprich. Their focus turned to Mitchell fishing reels beginning in 1947. The Garcia Corporation became the sole distributor for Mitchell reels in the United States from 1947 through 1978. That was 31 years of exclusive access to the largest sporting goods market in the world. In February 1951, the New York Times published an article about the Mitchell after it appeared at a New York City sportsman's show. The reporter wrote that it was one of the finest spinning reels ever tried. That was not an advertisement, it was editorial. The American market read it and went looking for the reel. In April 1957, Carpano and Pons made a formal decision to number every model in its lineup. The original reel, until then called the Mitchell, became the Mitchell 300. That same year, 1957, the factory privately celebrated the production of its 1 millionth Mitchell reel. The milestone was kept internal. It would not be publicly known for another 50 years, revealed in 2007 by Doug DeSimone, the surviving son of Louis DeSimone, the man who had opened Impeco's United States operation in 1954. By 1966, the 10 millionth reel had been produced. Production reached 12,000 reels per day in 1970. The 20 millionth reel was celebrated in 1971. Those are not estimates. Those are milestones the factory tracked and marked. The Mitchell 300 sold at that volume for one reason. It was built to last and priced to reach. A Mitchell 300 cost close to $30 in the 1950s. By 1969, the Sears catalogue listed it at $16.44. As production scaled up, the price came down. A reel that had once been a considered purchase became affordable to nearly any angler. All Mitchell reel internals were stainless steel. The body was aluminum. The reel did not corrode. It did not strip its gears easily. An angler could disassemble it on a kitchen table with basic tools, clean it, oil it, reassemble it, and fish it again the next morning. Many did this for decades with the same reel. Mitchell produced at least 200 other models during its 5+ decades, most resembling larger or smaller versions of the Mitchell 300. The 308 was the ultralight version, built for trout. The 350 was the high-speed version. The 302 was the saltwater version, built heavier for sea fishing. Every model shared the same mechanical DNA as the Mitchell 300. Around 1953, Carpano and Pons introduced a left-hand retrieve version of the reel. Left-handed anglers had been excluded from most reel designs. This single addition doubled the potential customer base for the product. Early Mitchell reels used a half-bail system. After casting, the angler had to manually flip the bail arm back into position before retrieving line. The Hardy Company held a patent on the full bail arm design and protected it aggressively. When that patent expired in 1954, Mitchell immediately fitted the reel with a full bail. The bail now closed automatically with a single turn of the handle. Cast, turn, retrieve. The mechanical steps required to fish dropped by one. That one step removed from the process millions of times a day across millions of reels mattered enormously to anglers. Boys in the 1960s and 1970s saved up specifically to own a Mitchell 300 and envied every friend who got one first. This was not a product that sold on advertising alone. It sold because anglers who used it told other anglers about it. The Mitchell 300 had more impact on the decision of US manufacturers to begin producing open-face spinning reels than any other single product. American companies, Zebco, Penn and Shakespeare, watched the Mitchell take market share and began redesigning their own lineups in response. A reel made in a converted clockmaking school in the French Alps had reshaped the entire American fishing tackle industry. In 1965, Charles Pons died. Mitchell and the other Carpano and Pons divisions became separate companies. The man who had hired Maurice Jacquemin built the export partnerships and turned a precision engineering firm into the world's dominant fishing reel manufacturer was gone. Mitchell was now independent. It had no founding family to anchor it. 7 years later, the first outside buyer arrived. By 1972, the Garcia Corporation had become the main stockholder of Mitchell. Garcia purchased the company outright in June 1974. Garcia was the right buyer on paper. It had spent 27 years as Mitchell's sole American distributor. It understood the product, the market, and the customer. The problem was that Garcia had also spent those 27 years as a distributor, not a manufacturer. Running a sales operation and running a precision engineering factory are two entirely different businesses. Garcia sold Mitchell back to the Carpano family in 1977. That was 3 years of ownership. The company changed hands twice before 1978. The Carpano heirs now held Mitchell again, but the competitive landscape had shifted beneath them. Japanese manufacturers had spent the 1970s building cheaper spinning reels at industrial scale. Their products were lighter, less expensive, and reaching the same retail shelves as the Mitchell 300. Anglers who had once saved up for a Mitchell were now choosing a Japanese reel at half the price. In 1980, Mitchell was purchased by Browning. Browning was an American company. Its core business was firearms. Fishing reels were not Browning's expertise, and the acquisition did not change Mitchell's deteriorating position in the market. The oil crisis and strong international competition in the late 1970s forced Mitchell to declare bankruptcy in 1981. That number, 1981, is worth holding for a moment. In 1970, the factory had produced 12,000 reels per day. In 1971, it had celebrated the 20 millionth reel. 11 years later, the same company was insolvent. The collapse was not gradual, it was fast. Browning's involvement with Mitchell lasted from 1980 to 1983. It exited as the bankruptcy unfolded, leaving the company without a parent and without a clear path forward. Philippe Blime took over Mitchell in 1982. Blime was a restructuring operator, not a watchmaker's heir. His strategy was to rejuvenate the product line, reduce costs, increase distribution, and innovate throughout, while at the same time respecting the tradition. That last clause, respecting the tradition, would prove to be the part of the strategy that gave way first. In 1983 and 1984, stiff international competition forced Mitchell to subcontract the manufacture of its products to the Pacific Rim. The decision was economic. Labour costs in Asia were a fraction of those in France. A reel that cost a certain amount to build in Cluses could be built for significantly less in a Pacific Rim factory. The math was straightforward. The consequences were not. A Mitchell 300 built in Cluses was assembled by workers whose professional culture descended directly from 150 years of alpine clockmaking. The tolerances they worked to, the standards they applied, and the institutional knowledge embedded in that factory did not transfer to a subcontract agreement with a Pacific Rim manufacturer. French engineers retained control of the product's concept and design. But concept and design are instructions. Execution is something else. The shift in manufacturing brought a move toward more plastic components in newer models to reduce costs and weight. The change was visible to anyone who held an early reel next to a later one. The older reel was heavier, it was denser, it felt like a precision instrument because it was one. The newer reel felt like a consumer product. Many purists and collectors held the earlier all-metal French-made models in higher regard for their perceived superior durability and craftsmanship. This was not nostalgia. Anglers who had fished both versions reported the difference. The Mitchell 300 that sold 10 million units by 1966 and the Mitchell 300 that was being sold in the mid-1980s shared a name and a silhouette. The internals told a different story. The French factory closed in 1988 and 1989. For a period after that, reels were still hand-assembled in France, using old stock parts. The building that Charles Pons had converted from the Cluses Clockmakers School In 1948, the building that had produced 20 million reels by 1971 was closed. Production had left France entirely. On January 2, 1990, Mitchell was acquired by Johnson Worldwide Associates. Johnson Worldwide Associates was an American conglomerate. It owned the Johnson fishing reel line and saw Mitchell as a complementary acquisition, a way to add a globally recognized brand to its portfolio. After the acquisition, the company moved its headquarters and research and development operations to Marigny, France. Marigny is 12 kilometers from Cluses. The distance on a map is small. The distance from the factory floor, where Louis Carpano's precision engineering tradition had lived for over a century, was absolute. At the time of the JWA acquisition, nearly 30 million Mitchell 300 reels had been sold worldwide. That figure came with no manufacturing plant in France, no founding family, and no continuity with the workforce that had built those reels. Mitchell was not entirely disengaged from the culture it had been built on. In 1987, Mitchell had launched a program called 1 franc per reel, donating 1 franc from every reel sold to fund projects committed to preserving France's rivers. By 1990, 50 schools throughout France had used Mitchell's fishing education materials to teach more than 2,000 young people. These programs were real. They reflected a company that still understood what it had come from. But they were marketing initiatives built on top of a business that had already been structurally dismantled. In 2000, Mitchell was purchased by Pure Fishing as part of the JWA Fishing Products acquisition. Pure Fishing was a large American fishing tackle conglomerate. Its portfolio already included Berkeley, Abu Garcia, and Fenwick. Mitchell became one brand among several, managed from Spirit Lake, Iowa. In April 2007, Pure Fishing's parent group was acquired by Jarden Corporation. In December 2015, Newell Rubbermaid acquired Jarden Corporation. In November 2018, Pure Fishing was sold to Sycamore Partners. Sycamore Partners is a private equity firm. It does not make fishing reels. It manages assets. Between 1965 and 2018, Mitchell passed through at least 7 ownership structures in 53 years. Carpano and Pons, Garcia, back to the Carpano family, Browning, Felipe Blime's restructuring, Johnson Worldwide Associates, Pure Fishing, Jarden, Newell Rubbermaid, Sycamore Partners. Each transfer came with a new set of priorities. None of those priorities included rebuilding a precision manufacturing operation in the French Alps. In the mid-1990s, a sales representative at a fishing tackle company that had recently acquired the Mitchell lineup was asked about the Mitchell 300. His answer was direct. He said the average age of guys using Mitchell 300 reels is 64. That is not a demographic looking to buy. That statement captures exactly what had happened to Mitchell inside the corporate portfolio era. The reel was no longer seen as a product to be built well and sold widely. It was seen as a legacy asset attached to an aging customer base. The goal was not to make the Mitchell 300 the best fishing reel in the world again. The goal was to manage the decline. Collector pieces marked Made in France are considered the only true vintage Mitchell reels. Later reels made elsewhere are generally regarded as less desirable by purists and collectors. The Mitchell Reel Museum was established online in 2006, specifically to document all Mitchell reels made in France between 1939 and 1989. That 50-year window is precise and deliberate. The museum's founders drew a hard line at 1989, the year French manufacturing ended, because everything before that date is one product, and everything after is another. There are more Mitchell collectors worldwide than collectors of any other single manufacturer of open-face spinning reels. Those collectors are not preserving a brand, they are preserving an object made in a place during a specific period, before the factory closed, before the subcontracting began, before the ownership chain stretched so far from Cluses that the connection to Louis Carpano's clockmaking school became purely historical. The Mitchell 300 was not killed by a bad design. It was not outsold by a better reel. It was built by a family of Alpine precision engineers, bankrupted by an economic crisis, passed through 7 owners across 5 decades, and stripped of the factory, the materials, and the country that made it what it was. The reels built in Cluses before 1989 still work perfectly today. The company that made them does not. If this story meant something to you, subscribe and give this video a like. It's the best way to help more people find the history they didn't know they were missing. August 4th, 1953, Alfred Glassell Jr. hauled a 1,560-pound black marlin onto a boat off Cabo Blanco, Peru. He used a 7-foot bamboo rod, 130-pound linen line, and a Fin-Nor reel built inside a Miami repair shop. The record has never been broken. That same reel, machined from aircraft-grade aluminum bar stock in a small Florida machine shop, is now manufactured in China. How does the world's greatest fishing reel end up here? The problem with big game fishing reels in the 1930s. In the 1930s, big game saltwater fishing was the sport of the wealthy. Industrialists, writers, and celebrities traveled to the open ocean to target bluefin tuna, black marlin, and swordfish. These fish weighed anywhere from 300 to over 1,000 pounds. The reels available to catch them were not built for that job. Most fishing reels of the era were designed for freshwater fish, bass, trout, and salmon. They were adapted for ocean use, but not engineered for it. When a 500-pound bluefin tuna makes its first run, it strips hundreds of yards of line in seconds. The heat generated by that friction destroys an undersized drag system in minutes. Miami, Florida was the center of American big game fishing during this period. The captains based there needed equipment that could survive what the Atlantic Ocean threw at them. The man in the machine shop, Fred Greeton, ran the Finley Norwood Machine Shop in Miami. He repaired boats and automobiles. He was a machinist, not a fisherman. In 1933, a Miami fishing captain named Lloyd Knowles walked into Greeton's shop with a problem. Knowles had designed a massive big game reel to stop the giant bluefin tuna migrating off Bimini, just 50 miles away. He lacked the machining skill to build it. Greeton did the work. The reel cost $339 to produce. Greeton's machine work alone accounted for $215 of that total. After 3 reels, Knowles walked away from the project. Greeton did not. He had watched Knowles' reel take shape in his own hands. He understood the problem. A big game reel needed a drag system powerful enough to slow a fish that weighed as much as a car. Greeton borrowed the solution from the automobile itself, a drum-style band brake, the same mechanism that stops a vehicle at speed. The manufacturing standard that defined everything. Greeton machined every reel component from solid aircraft-grade aluminum bar stock. A single spool started as a 16-pound block of aluminum. 14 pounds were cut away as waste. At a cost of nearly $1 per pound, 2 pounds of finished spool remained. That process was expensive. It was also the reason every finished part was dense, uniform, and free of defects. Casting metal into a mold introduces air pockets and weak points. Machining from solid bar stock produces none. On October 19, 1937, Greeton received his first patent. The company name was formally changed to Fin-Nor that same year. The reels went on sale in 1936. Captain Tommy Gifford was about to find out what they could do. The first reel test. Tommy Gifford had been running charter fishing boats out of Miami since 1920. He was 24 years old when he started. By the mid-1930s, he had built one of the most respected reputations in big game fishing in the United States. Ernest Hemingway hired him. Michael Lerner hired him. The men who fished the hardest waters on Earth trusted his judgment on equipment above almost anyone else's. In 1935, Gifford took Greeton's first 15-0 Fin-Nor reel to Nova Scotia. He brought it to Wedgeport, a small fishing village on the southwestern tip of the province. It had become one of the only reliable places in the world to find giant Atlantic bluefin tuna in catchable numbers. Michael Lerner was with him. Lerner was not simply a wealthy angler. He was the man who, 4 years later, in 1939, would found the International Game Fish Association, the organization that to this day sets the rules for what counts as a legitimate world record catch. His opinion on fishing tackle carried institutional weight. The two men fished Wedgeport hard. Lerner caught 21 bluefin tuna over 11 days. The fish ranged from 86 pounds to 450 pounds. The reel held through every one of them. When Lerner and Gifford came back from Nova Scotia, they told everyone the reel worked. Greeton started selling his 15-0 tuna reels the following year in 1936. Demand was immediate. Word spread the way it always spreads among serious anglers, not through advertising, but through the docks. Captains talked. The reel weighed 35 pounds. It was enormous by any standard, but it stopped fish that destroyed everything else, the Cat K bluefin. Before the Nova Scotia trip, Greeton's prototype had already proven itself once. In 1933, Captain Tommy Gifford and Frederick Martin Greeton, along with a group of Miami captains, took an early prototype to Cat K. Cat K is a small island in the Bahamas, approximately 50 miles east of Miami. The waters around it were known for concentrations of giant bluefin tuna moving along their Atlantic migration route. On that trip, the prototype reel was used to land a 527-pound bluefin tuna. A 527-pound bluefin tuna is not a fish that politely cooperates. Its first run off the boat can strip 300 yards of line from a reel in under a minute. The force applied to the drag system during that run is violent and sustained. Most reels of the era came apart under that pressure. The drag mechanisms would seize, slip or shatter. The Finnor prototype did none of those things. It held. The war interruption. By 1939, Greeton had expanded the reel lineup. He introduced a size 12-0 reel and a size 10-0 reel that year. Both were available with or without a second handle, a design that allowed an angler to reel with both hands simultaneously. Also, in 1939, the IGFA ruled double-handled reels unsportsmanlike and banned their use in record attempts. Finnor stopped making them immediately. Then came the war. In 1941, the United States entered World War II. Greeton suspended commercial reel production. The Finley Norwood machine shop stayed operational. It is believed Greeton took on defense subcontracting work for Frank O'Brien. O'Brien was the owner of Tycoon Tackle, a Miami-based rod manufacturer whose products were already the most common pairing with Finnor reels on the water. When the war ended in 1945, Greeton made a decision that nearly cost him everything. He sold Finnor to a man named L.S. Getty. Getty incorporated the company in 1945 under the name Finnor Machine Industries Incorporated and continued producing reels. The reels were not good. Getty's operation turned out products that fell below the standard Greeton had spent a decade building. It is not documented exactly how many reels were made or what specific failures they exhibited, but the outcome was clear. Getty defaulted, the company collapsed under him. By August 1947, Fred Greeton paid 3 years of back fees to the state of Florida and reinstated Finnor Machine Shop Incorporated. He took the company back. He had built it once. Now he built it again. The record that changed everything. In 1952, Alfred Curry Glassell Jr. became the first angler in history to land a black marlin weighing over 1,000 pounds under IGFA rules. The fish weighed 1,025 pounds. He caught it off Cabo Blanco, Peru. Glassell was a Houston-based oil and gas businessman. He was a co-founder of the Transcontinental Gas Pipeline Corporation, the company that built the first natural gas transmission system between Texas and New York. He was not a fishing guide or a professional angler. He was a man who pursued big game fishing with the same systematic intensity he applied to the energy business. He used a Finnor reel. 1 year later, on August 4th, 1953, Glassell went back to Cabo Blanco. Cabo Blanco sits on the northwestern coast of Peru. It is the point where the cold Humboldt Current, running north along the South American coastline, meets the warm waters of the Pacific Equatorial Current. That collision of water temperatures drives plankton to the surface. The plankton feeds smaller fish. The smaller fish draw the largest predators in the Pacific Ocean. The underwater geography off Cabo Blanco, a steep canyon system that drops off dramatically close to shore, concentrates black marlin in numbers found almost nowhere else on Earth. Anglers called the area Marlin Boulevard. On August 4th, Glassell hooked a black marlin. He was fishing aboard a boat called Petrel, skippered by Captain Sterling Stewart. Glassell used a handheld 7-foot bamboo rod. He used 130-pound test linen line, and he used a Finnor reel. The fish jumped 49 times. A review of the footage taken that day counted every jump. Each one was a full breach, the entire body of the fish clearing the surface of the water. Each jump put a different angle of force on the line, the rod and the reel. The fight lasted 1 hour and 45 minutes. When it was over, the fish weighed 1,560 pounds. It measured 14 feet 6 inches in length. The girth was 6 feet 9 inches. It remains the IGFA all-tackle world record for black marlin, and the largest bony fish ever caught on rod and reel. As of 2026, that record has stood for 73 years. The Finnor reel had survived every one of those 49 jumps. It had survived 1 hour and 45 minutes of sustained pressure from a fish that weighed 3/4 of a ton. The drag system, cork pressing against machined aluminum, had never slipped, seized, or failed. Cabo Blanco and the world it created. Glassell had co-founded the Cabo Blanco Fishing Club. Founding membership cost $10,000. When a millionaire later offered $50,000 to join, the club turned him down. The club drew the most famous names in the world. Marilyn Monroe visited, so did Humphrey Bogart, John Wayne, Paul Newman, James Stewart, and Nelson Rockefeller. Ernest Hemingway arrived in 1956 and stayed for 32 days. He was not a member. He came to fish and to work. Part of the 1958 film adaptation of The Old Man and the Sea was shot at Cabo Blanco, and footage from Glassell's own catches was used in the film. Every serious big game angler in the world knew what reel had been on that boat on August 4th, 1953. There was no advertisement that could replicate what that catch communicated. The records kept mounting. The 1953 Black Marlin record was the most famous, but it was not alone. On May 7th, 1953, 3 months before Glassell's marlin, Louis E. Marron set the IGFA all-tackle world record for swordfish. Marron caught a 1,182-pound swordfish off Iquique, Chile. His tackle included a 12-0 Finnor reel, 2 all-tackle world records for the 2 most prestigious big game species on Earth, both set with a Finnor reel in the same calendar year. Over the decades that followed, Finnor reels accumulated 900 IGFA records. The IGFA record book is not a participation certificate. It is the definitive measure of tackle performance under maximum stress. A reel that accumulates 900 records across multiple species, multiple decades, and multiple oceans is a product that was consistently superior to every available alternative. The price and what it meant. One journalist writing about the company at the height of its powers reached for a direct comparison. He called Tycoon Finnor the Rolls-Royce of the fishing tackle industry. The numbers justified it. A large 12-0 Finnor reel sold for $645. A matching Tycoon rod was $235. A single spool of line for that reel cost $78. In the prices of that era, $645 for a fishing reel was the cost of a used car. These were purchases made by oil executives, industrialists, and men like Glassell, people for whom the equipment was an extension of the seriousness with which they approached the sport. But the company was about to change hands, and with it, the direction of everything Greeton had built. The man who grew up in his father's machine shop, Garwood Sr., was one of the most famous men in America in the 1920s and the 1930s. He was a championship motorboat racer. He held the world water speed record multiple times. He was the first man to travel over 100 miles per hour on water. His racing boats, a series called Miss America, became national symbols of American mechanical ambition. His son, Garwood Jr., grew up around engines, speed, and precision machining, but where the father chased water speed records, the son preferred fishing. Wood Jr. grew up in Miami. He spent his time on the water, targeting the tropical game fish that moved through South Florida, tarpon, sailfish, and marlin. Like his father, he had a mechanical instinct that expressed itself in invention. As a young man, he began designing fishing reels in his father's machine shop in Miami. Wood Jr. designed 4 lines of trolling reels for Finnor, the Silver Regal, the Golden Regal, the Viscount, and the Light. He also designed the Garwood Jr. spinning reel for the company. These were functional, well-made saltwater reels that expanded Finnor's lineup beyond the heavy, big-game trolling reels Greeton had built. But none of those reels would define what Wood Jr. left behind. The problem with saltwater. Fly fishing. To understand what Wood Jr. built next, it helps to understand what saltwater fly fishing was in the late 1950s. Fly fishing, at its core, uses an artificial fly, a hook dressed with feathers, fur, or synthetic material, cast with a specialized flexible rod and a weighted line. The weight of the line carries the fly forward, unlike conventional fishing, where the weight of the lure or sinker does the work. It is a precise, technical method of fishing. In freshwater, fly fishing was well established by the mid-20th century. Trout and salmon anglers had refined their equipment over generations. Reels for freshwater fly fishing were relatively simple. The fish were not enormous, and the drag requirements were modest. Saltwater fly fishing was different. The fish were bigger, much bigger. A tarpon, one of the primary targets for saltwater fly anglers in South Florida, can weigh over 200 pounds. It jumps repeatedly and runs at sustained high speed. A bonefish, another common saltwater target, can strip 100 yards of line from a reel in a single run. A permit, a large flat-bodied fish found on the same flats as bonefish, fights with a combination of speed and raw power that tests every component of the tackle system. The reels available for saltwater fly fishing in the late 1950s were not built for any of this. The most widely used fly reel of the era was the Fluiger Medalist. The Fluiger Medalist was a freshwater reel. It was light, affordable, and adequate for trout. It was completely inadequate for a 150-pound tarpon running at full speed on a tropical flat. The drag system was too weak. The frame was too light. Under serious saltwater pressure, medalists failed, sometimes catastrophically, the frame buckling or the drag seizing at the worst possible moment. Serious saltwater fly anglers were catching world-class fish on reels that were not built for the job, and they knew it. The gift that became a revolution. One of the owners brought into the Finnor operation after the Southern Tackle acquisition was an avid saltwater fly fisherman. He fished the South Florida flats regularly. He understood exactly what Fluiger medalists did when a big tarpon ran. He had watched his reels fail. He wanted something that would not. His close friend was Garwood Jr. In 1962, Wood Jr. built him a saltwater fly reel as a gift. Wood Jr. had been thinking about the problem for years. The reel he designed used a direct drive mechanism, meaning the spool turned directly when the handle was cranked with no intermediate gearing. It was housed inside a cage frame, an open skeletal structure of machined aluminum rings that surrounded the spool on all sides, protecting it while minimizing weight. The drag system used a full disc of cork pressing against a machined aluminum surface. Cork provides consistent friction across a wide range of temperatures. When a large fish runs and the drag heats up, cork maintains its grip. It compresses slightly under heat rather than glazing or slipping the way synthetic materials do. The disc covered the full face of the spool, not a partial pad, not a star wheel, a complete circle of contact. Finnor called it the full circle disc drag system. The owner received the reel, fished it, and immediately understood what Wood Jr. had built. He made a deal with Wood Jr. to put it into production. Number 3, the standard. The number 3, wedding cake, became the defining saltwater fly reel of its era. Tarpon fishing in the Florida Keys had been developing since the 1950s. Anglers waded or poled skiffs across shallow grass flats, casting flies to fish they could see swimming. The technique required precision casting, accurate presentation, and tackle that could survive what happened after the fly was eaten. A tarpon that takes a fly on the flats does not simply run. It runs, jumps, runs again, shakes its head violently, trying to throw the hook, and then runs some more. The entire sequence can last 45 minutes on a single fish. Every second of that fight applies sustained pressure to the reel's drag system. The number 3 wedding cake handled all of it. The full circle disc drag provided smooth, consistent resistance throughout the fight, not jerky, not variable, and not prone to the sudden lockup that destroyed lesser reels at the worst moment. The machined aircraft-grade aluminum frame resisted corrosion from saltwater exposure. The cage construction protected the spool from sand and debris on the flats. The number 3 became the go-to tarpon reel. It became the standard against which every subsequent saltwater fly reel would be measured for decades. Collectors today pay thousands of dollars for original number 3 wedding cakes in working condition. Number 4, 28 reels and a fatal flaw. The number 4 wedding cake had the same diameter as the number 3. The difference was the width of the spool. The number 4 spool was wider, designed to hold more line for larger fish on longer runs. Finnor used the same spindle in both reels. The spindle is the central axle that the spool rotates around. On the number 3, that spindle diameter was adequate. The spool was narrow enough that the forces applied during a fish fight were distributed across a short span. On the number 4, the wider spool created a longer lever arm. When a large fish pulled line from the outer edge of the wider spool, the force applied to the spindle was not distributed, it was concentrated. The spindle bent. When the spindle bent, the spool shifted inside the frame, making contact with the interior of the cage. The contact created friction. The friction snapped the line. The reel failed at the exact moment it was most needed. Finnor caught the problem and stopped production immediately. Only 28 number 4 wedding cakes had been completed and sold. The model was discontinued. Those 28 reels became objects of obsession for collectors. A reel that failed in the field, that was discontinued after fewer than 30 units, became the rarest and most sought-after item in Finnor's entire history. By the early 2000s, number 4 wedding cakes were selling for $10,000 each. A manufacturing defect had created the most valuable reel Finnor ever made. The presentation set. The number 1, number 2, and number 3 wedding cakes were also sold as a presentation set. The 3 reels were packaged together in a fine wood box, custom fitted to hold each reel precisely in place. These sets were purchased by anglers who treated their equipment as permanent possessions, objects to be displayed, maintained, and passed down. The presentation box communicated that the reels inside were not consumable tackle. They were precision instruments with an expected service life measured in decades. The wedding cake line ran in production until 1976, 21 years. No other manufacturer produced a comparable saltwater fly reel during that entire period. The economics that couldn't last. The wedding cake was the finest saltwater fly reel ever made. It was also extraordinarily expensive to produce. Every component was machined from solid aircraft-grade aluminum bar stock, using the same process Greeton had established in 1936. A single spool started as a 16-pound block of raw aluminum. 14 pounds were cut away as waste, at nearly $1 per pound. The machining time required for the tiered drag plates alone, each one a separate disc cut to precise tolerances, was substantial. The finished product sold at a price that reflected every one of those costs. Outside of Miami, the fishing tackle industry was changing. Japan had rebuilt its manufacturing base after World War II. By the 1970s, Japanese companies had mastered precision casting and cold forging, methods that produced aluminum components with adequate strength at a fraction of the machining cost. A cold-forged aluminum part required no material waste. The raw aluminum was pressed into shape rather than cut away. Shimano entered the American fishing tackle market in 1970. Daiwa followed shortly after. Both companies produced well-engineered reels at prices that a working angler, not an oil executive, not a Wall Street investor, could afford. By the late 1970s, a serious saltwater angler had a choice. He could spend hundreds of dollars on a hand-machined fin-gnaw, or he could spend a fraction of that on a Japanese reel that performed well enough for most situations he would encounter. Fin-gnaw's market did not disappear, but it stopped growing. The anglers who understood what aircraft bar stock machining meant were still buying. Everyone else was buying Shimano. The wedding cake line was discontinued in 1976. The company that emerged from that era was still producing excellent reels, but the economics of American precision manufacturing were pulling in only one direction. In 1964, Henry Breyer III had taken ownership of Tycoon Fin-Gnaw from Southern Tackle. He continued the lineup through the following decades, but the company would change hands again and again, and each new owner would face the same unsolvable problem that Fin-Gnaw's manufacturing process created. The reel cost more to make correctly than the market was willing to pay. The problem that never changed. Every owner who took control of Fin-Gnaw after Fred Greeton faced the same spreadsheet. The aircraft bar stock machining process that built the brand's reputation was also the process that made the brand nearly impossible to run profitably. A single spool started as a 16-pound block of aircraft-grade aluminum. 14 pounds were cut away as waste. The raw material cost nearly $1 per pound, and that was just for one component of one reel. The machining time required for the tiered drag plates, the frame, the spool, and the internal components added labor costs that no competitor in the market was absorbing. Shimano had entered the American market in 1970. Daiwa followed. Both companies used cold forging and precision casting, manufacturing methods that pressed aluminum into shape rather than cutting it away. No material was wasted. The production time per unit was a fraction of what Fin-Gnaw required. The finished products were strong enough for most saltwater fishing situations most anglers would ever encounter. Most anglers could not feel the difference between a cold forged reel and a machined from bar stock reel in their hands. The anglers who could and who cared were a small and shrinking portion of the total saltwater fishing market. By the 1980s, the saltwater fishing market had expanded enormously compared to the 1950s. More Americans were fishing offshore than ever before, but the vast majority of that growth was in the middle market, anglers spending $100 to $300 on a reel, not $645. Fin-Gnaw's customers were real, they were loyal, they were simply not numerous enough to sustain a company built around a manufacturing process that produced the most expensive reels in the world. Zebco and the move to China. Zebco was one of the most recognizable names in American fishing tackle, but not in the world Fin-Gnaw had inhabited. Zebco built its reputation on affordable, closed-face spinning reels for freshwater anglers. Its most famous product, the Zebco 33, was a push-button reel sold at mass-market retailers for under $30. It was designed for beginners. It was designed for casual fishing on lakes and rivers. It was designed for a market that had absolutely nothing to do with landing a 1,000-pound black marlin off the coast of Peru. Zebco acquired Finnor. It also acquired Van Staal at the same time. Van Staal was a saltwater spinning reel brand known for extreme durability in surf fishing conditions, another premium saltwater name with a loyal following among serious anglers. Under Zebco's ownership, the decision was made to move Finnor reel manufacturing to China. The aircraft bar stock machining process ended. The Miami manufacturing operation that Fred Greeton had started in the 1930s, the shop where every component had been cut from solid aluminum billet by skilled machinists, was gone. The new reels used forged and die-cast aluminum components. The manufacturing method was now identical to the method used by every other mass-market reel manufacturer in the world. The name on the reel said Finnor. The process that had made that name mean something was no longer part of the product. Anglers who had spent decades fishing original Finnor reels noticed immediately. Fishing forums from that period recorded the response in blunt terms. The consensus was consistent. The new reels were functional saltwater equipment, but they were not the same product. They were not worth the premium the Finnor name still commanded. Many serious anglers made the decision to buy used original era Finnors on the collector market rather than purchase new production models. A reel manufactured in Miami in the 1960s, used, potentially in need of service, was preferable to a new reel bearing the same brand name. That is a specific and damaging kind of reputation problem. Pure fishing and the private equity era. In November 2018, a private equity firm called Sycamore Partners acquired Pure Fishing from Newell Brands for $1.3 billion. Pure Fishing was not a single brand. It was a portfolio company, a collection of fishing tackle brands managed together under one corporate structure. That portfolio included Abu Garcia, Berkeley, Fenwick, Penn, Shakespeare, Ugly Stick, and Stren. In December 2019, Pure Fishing acquired Finnor and Van Staal from W.C. Bradley Zebco Holdings Inc. Financial terms were not disclosed. Pure Fishing's chief executive officer, Harlan Kent, described Finnor and Van Staal as some of the most storied brands in the fishing industry. The acquisition added them to Pure Fishing's saltwater portfolio, which was already anchored by Penn, itself one of the most recognized names in offshore fishing tackle. Finnor was now owned by a private equity firm that also controlled more than a dozen other fishing brands simultaneously. The reel that Fred Greeton had machined by hand in a Miami repair shop, the reel that had landed the largest bony fish ever caught on rod and reel, was now a line item in a $1.3 billion portfolio managed for investor return. That is not an accusation. It is a description of what the brand had become, what the brand carries, and what it lost. Finnor today produces functional saltwater fishing equipment. The Marquette Lever Drag series uses frames and side plates precision machined from 6061 T6 aluminum. The Offshore Spinning Series and the Lethal Spinning Series are built for the mid to upper end of the saltwater market. The reels are engineered competently. They hold up to saltwater use. They are not machined from aircraft bar stock. They are not built in Miami. The brand name carries the weight of more than 900 IGFA world records. It carries the 1,560-pound black marlin that Alfred Glassell caught on August 4, 1953, a record that still has not been broken as of 2026, 73 years later. It carries the 1,182-pound swordfish Louis Marron landed with a 12-0 Finnor reel in May of that same year. It carries the memory of Tommy Gifford and Michael Lerner standing on a dock in Wedgeport, Nova Scotia in 1935, declaring that the first 15-0 reel had done its job. None of those records were set on die-cast aluminum. All of them were set on reels machined from solid bar stock in Miami, Florida, by Fred Greeton and the craftsmen who worked in his tradition. The original wedding cake reels, the number 1, number 2, and number 3 models that ran from 1955 to 1976, now sell on collector markets for thousands of dollars each. The number 4, all 28 of them, sell for $10,000. A reel that failed in the field is worth more today than most modern offshore setups cost new. What remains, Fred Greeton started with a boat mechanic's problem and an automobile engineer's solution. He applied drum brake logic to a fishing reel, machined every component from the same aluminum used in aircraft construction, and produced a product that the most demanding anglers in the world could not break. He built the company. He lost it. He bought it back. He built it again. When he finally sold it for the last time, in 1957, the reels had already accumulated records that would stand for the rest of the century and beyond. The brand still exists. Finnor reels are sold today in tackle shops and online retailers alongside products from the same portfolio company that owns Ugly Stick and Shakespeare. The manufacturing happens in China. The price points have come down to reach a broader market. Whether that represents a fall depends on what you think a brand is for. If a brand exists to generate revenue and reach as many customers as possible, then Finnor today is a functioning commercial enterprise. If a brand is the sum of what it has actually built and the standard it held while building it, then the Finnor that set 900 world records stopped existing when the bar stock machining stopped. The record still stands. August 4th, 1953, 1,560 pounds. A bamboo rod linen line and a reel built by a Miami boat mechanic who had never caught a fish in his life. If you found this story worth your time, subscribe and leave a like. It genuinely helps. In 1881, a German immigrant opened a workshop at 217 Ash Street in Akron, Ohio. Akron would become the center of what followed. Ernest Friedrich Pflueger was born in Baden-Baden, Germany in 1843. He arrived in America at age 5. He learned 2 trades in Buffalo, baking and molding. At age 20, he moved to Erie, Pennsylvania, and ran a grocery store. At age 38, he moved to Akron and opened a factory. P.F. Pflueger grew from those small beginnings. By the time he died, he held 70 patents. Patents would define his legacy. The year 1881 was 2 years after Thomas Edison demonstrated the electric light bulb. The Transcontinental Railroad had been complete for 12 years. The United States population was 50 million people, and more Americans had leisure time than any prior generation. Fishing was growing with it, but the tackle market was fragmented. A fisherman needed hooks from one supplier, lures from another, and rods from a third. No single factory made everything. In the history of the American hardware trade, that had never changed until Akron. Akron changed how the trade worked. Ernest F. Pflueger was not a fisherman. He was a molder and an inventor who had already filed patents on 50 original devices before he opened his factory doors. He spotted a market that no one had fully served, and he decided to serve all of it. Inventor describes him well. The Enterprise Manufacturing Company started with tin rosettes, small metal decorations pressed onto horse harnesses. That was the first product. That was the whole business. Enterprise was small at first. It was not a fishing company yet. One thing needs to be stated clearly before going further. The Enterprise Manufacturing Company was not founded by Ernest F. Pflueger alone. 3 men started it. Each one brought something the others did not have. Scene 1. The real founding, 3 men not one. In 1881, 3 men started the Enterprise Manufacturing Company in Akron, Ohio. The first was Ferdinand Schumacher. Schumacher was not a fisherman and not an inventor. He was one of the most successful industrialists in Ohio. the man whose oatmeal mills eventually merged into what became the Quaker Oats Company. He brought capital and credibility. At the founding, he held the title of President. The second man was Harry Comstock. Comstock was an inventor from Fulton, New York. He was a gun enthusiast, a salesman, and a designer who had spent years studying the way fish fed near the surface of water. He came to the company with a patent already in hand. At the founding, he held the title of Superintendent. The third man was Ernest F. Pfluger. He was the 14-year-old son of Ernest F. Pfluger. He had been working in his father's workshop since he was old enough to hold a tool. At the founding, he held the title of Manager. Ernest F. Pfluger himself was not listed as an officer at the company's founding. He operated alongside his son in the background. By 1897, the company's catalogue listed him as President. He grew into that title over 16 years. This matters. The story of Pfluger is often told as a single man and a single idea. The real story begins with three men who each brought something the others could not provide alone. Scene 2. The first major product, the Flying Hellgrammite. Harry Comstock filed his most important patent on January 30th, 1883 in Fulton, New York. The invention was the Flying Hellgrammite. It was a fishing lure built from a wooden body, red glass eyes, 2 spinning nickel-plated blades, and 3 treble hooks. It was designed to imitate the Dobson fly, an insect that large fish fed on near the water's surface. Historians consider it the first wooden fishing lure ever made. It was also the first lure to use glass eyes. Comstock made the Flying Hellgrammite for 8 months. Then he sold the patent to Enterprise Manufacturing. The company took the design and added one thing: luminous paint on the blades. The Pfluger Flying Hellgrammite went into production in 1883. It ran for 2 years, ending in 1885. This was not a straight line of success. It was a transaction. Comstock built the idea. Enterprise Manufacturing bought it, improved it, and moved on. That pattern, acquire, improve, scale, would define the company for the next 40 years. Scene 3. The phosphorescent patent, the invention that built the company. The same year Comstock filed his patent, Ernest F. Pfluger was reading a magazine article in Akron. The article described the extinction of a species of phosphorescent fish. The fish had glowed in dark water. Predators hunted them specifically because of the light they produced. The article was about the fish's disappearance. Pfluger read it as an instruction manual. He had an idea. If fish hunted by light, then a lure that glowed in the dark would catch fish that no ordinary lure could reach. Most fish, especially the large predatory ones, fed at dusk and after dark. Every lure on the market in 1883 was invisible in those conditions. Pfluger took a glass minnow and filled it with luminous paint. He did not test it alone. Ernest F. Pfluger and Ernest A. Pfluger, along with a local artist named Todd Bender, carried a rowboat to a nearby spillway and rowed out to the middle. They cast the glass minnow into the dark water. Nothing happened. They cast it again. Nothing. They cast it 6 more times before, on the 7th cast, a fish struck. 1 fish, 1 night, 1 small boat on a spillway in Akron, Ohio. In 1883, Ernest F. Pfluger filed the patent. The patent covered the use of phosphorescent paint on artificial fishing lures. It was broad. The paint could be applied to leather, cork, metal, wood, rubber, pearl, and glass. It did not apply to one lure or one design. It applied to a method, and that method could be used on anything the company made. The 1897 company catalogue listed Ernest F. Pfluger as the inventor of the Pfluger luminous bait. That one line in a catalogue represented 14 years of commercial growth built on a single idea, tested on a dark spillway, with 3 men in a rowboat. The phosphorescent patent did not just sell lures, it funded everything that came next. Scene 4. The factory becomes the largest in the world. Through the 1880s and the 1890s, the Enterprise Manufacturing Company expanded steadily in Akron. The factory did not stay in novelties. It did not stay in lures. It moved into hooks, and it moved into hooks at a scale that had no precedent anywhere in the world. By the time Ernest F. Pfluger's obituary was written in November 1900, the factory at 217 Ash Street had become the largest fish hook manufacturing plant in the world. It produced several 100 million hooks per year. That number is not approximate. Several 100 million hooks per year from one factory in Akron, Ohio. Ernest F. Pfluger did not live to see the full extent of what that growth became. His health failed 18 months before his death. He kept working as long as he could, then stepped back when he could no longer continue. On November 18th, 1900, Ernest Frederick Pfluger died at Massillon, Ohio, at the age of 57. He had slipped and fallen, breaking his leg in 2 places. The injury accelerated what illness had already started. After all debts were paid, his estate was valued at over $100,000. He carried $23,000 in life insurance. He left behind 6 children, a factory that was the largest of its kind in the world, and 70 patents, every one of them embedded in a product the company was actively manufacturing. Scene 5. Ernest F. Pfluger takes over. Ernest Andrew Pfluger was born in Erie, Pennsylvania, on December 6, 1866. He had grown up inside the business. He attended public school in Akron until age 14, then went straight to work in his father's factory. In 1882, at age 15, he became the company's secretary and treasurer. He was not handed those responsibilities. He earned them inside a company his father was still running. After his father's death in 1900, Ernest A. took full control. His first major decision was a name change. The Enterprise Manufacturing Company became the E.A. Pfluger Company. The change signaled a new direction. Ernest A. was not interested in running a hook factory. He was interested in building the company that sold everything a fisherman needed: rods, reels, flies, lures, line, and tackle of every kind. Ernest A. did not run the company alone. His younger brother, Charles T. Pfluger, rose through the organization to become vice president and production manager. Charles ran the factory floor, while Ernest A. managed the business. In 1896, Ernest A. married Julia Ruth Seiberling. Julia's brothers were Frank A. Seiberling and Charles W. Seiberling. The Seiberling brothers founded Goodyear Rubber. The Pfluger family was now connected by marriage to one of the most powerful industrial dynasties in Ohio. In the 1910s, the company name changed again. The E.A. Pfluger Company became Pfluger Fishing Tackle. The family name was now the brand. There was no longer any separation between the people and the product they sold. Scene 6. The first reels, from 1901 to 1916. The company had been making fishing tackle for 20 years before it made its first reel. On February 10, 1903, Joseph E. Pfluger, one of Ernest F.'s sons, filed the company's first reel patent. The patent was for a side plate design: 2 hard rubber plates with an aluminum plate sandwiched between them. It was a structural innovation. It made the reel body stronger without adding weight. That patent opened a new product line. The company had built its reputation on hooks and lures. Now it was building reels. In 1916, Pfluger released the Supreme Baitcaster, the first major commercial fishing reel the company had produced. It was built in Akron, Ohio, in the original factory. The Supreme had 2 features that set it apart from every other baitcaster on the market. The first was an automatic free spool. The second was an adjustable anti-backlash mechanism. And every single reel was serialized, meaning each unit carried its own individual number. Serialized reels were not standard practice in 1916. Most manufacturers did not track individual units. Pfluger did. That decision meant the company could identify exactly when a reel was made and exactly how it performed over time. Scene 7. The Medalist, the best-selling fly reel in American history. Charles T. Flueger, Vice President, Production Manager, and younger brother of Ernest A. Flueger, designed the product that would outlast everything else the company ever made. On October 27, 1928, Charles filed a patent application for a new flywheel design. The patent was granted on September 9, 1930, as patent number D81995. The following year, in 1931, the name appeared in the company's catalogue for the first time: the Flueger Medalist. The design was straightforward. The spool could be removed and changed in seconds. The check and drag system was sturdy and consistent. The reel was light, affordable, and reliable in conditions that destroyed more expensive equipment. Fly fishing in 1931 was not a niche hobby. It was how millions of Americans caught trout, panfish, and bass in rivers and streams across the country. The Medalist put a quality fly reel within reach of anglers who could not afford the high-end alternatives. It became the first fly reel for an entire generation of American fishermen, and then it became the first fly reel for the generation after that. The Medalist was a mainstay for 70 years. No other American fly reel has matched that record. Ernest Andrew Flueger died on January 6, 1944, in Akron, Ohio, at the age of 77. By 1944, the company his father founded in a tin rosette workshop had filed over 70 patents, built the largest fishhook factory on Earth, released the most successful fly reel in American history, and put fishing tackle in the hands of millions of people across the country. The family had built something that could run without them. That was about to become a problem. In 1945, the Flueger factory in Akron, Ohio, resumed full production after World War II restrictions eased in the United States. Industrial records from 1945 show metal rationing programs ending after the Allied victory in September 1945. The company redirected steel and aluminum back into fishing reel production after years of wartime allocation to military suppliers. Factory logs from 1946 recorded increased output of reels and hooks compared to wartime levels in 1943. Demand increased sharply as American soldiers returned home and resumed recreational fishing activities across rivers and lakes. Demand rose with leisure time and access to the outdoors. Retail orders from 1947 show rising bulk purchases from sporting goods distributors in the Midwest, including Illinois and Ohio. The company expanded packaging operations to support higher shipment volume across national supply chains. In 1948, the Flueger Medalist fly reel entered its strongest period of national distribution in the United States. Company catalogues from 1948 listed the Medalist as a standard product in fly fishing sections of sporting goods stores. The reel was sold through major retail chains, including Sears Roebuck catalogues, distributed to millions of American households. Sales records from the late 1940s show consistent demand for low-cost fly reels among beginner anglers. The Medalist design remained structurally consistent with earlier 1930s specifications documented in company engineering drawings. Maintenance reports from anglers described long service life under repeated freshwater use in rivers across North America. The reel became a common entry point product for new fishermen learning fly fishing techniques during post-war leisure expansion. The company maintained production stability by standardizing parts across multiple Medalist variations. In 1952, Flueger manufacturing output increased due to suburban growth in the United States. Housing data from 1950 to 1955 shows millions of new suburban homes built across states such as California and New York. Recreational spending increased during this period as household incomes rose, according to United States Census economic reports. Recreational spending helped support consumer demand for hobbies. Fishing equipment became a stable consumer category in department stores across suburban retail centers. Stable categories like fishing gear found regular shelf space. Fluger reels were displayed alongside rods and tackle kits in sporting goods sections of large retail chains. Pafluger became a familiar name to shoppers. Production systems in Akron were adjusted to support assembly line efficiency rather than small batch craftsmanship. Factory records show reduced assembly time per reel compared to earlier pre-war manufacturing cycles. Standardized component systems allowed interchangeable parts across multiple reel models within the same production line. In 1960, Japanese manufacturing companies began entering global fishing equipment markets with lower-cost reels. Industry reports from the early 1960s show increasing import volumes of fishing reels into the United States. Companies such as Shimano expanded production of precision metal reels using automated machining techniques. These reels often cost less per unit than American manufactured equivalents sold in domestic retail stores. American manufacturers faced pricing pressure as retailers compared imported reels with domestic products. Fluger responded by focusing on durability testing standards and reinforced mechanical components. Engineering documentation from the 1960s shows increased emphasis on corrosion resistance and long-term usability. The company shifted from innovation leadership toward reliability positioning in the fishing tackle market. In 1965, fishing reel production across the United States began consolidating under larger corporate structures. Smaller manufacturing plants in Ohio and Pennsylvania were gradually absorbed into regional production networks. Fluger operations became part of larger distribution systems that managed multiple fishing equipment brands. Production efficiency became more important than independent product design within single factories. Factory employment records show a gradual reduction in manual inspection roles as assembly became automated. Quality control systems shifted towards standardized testing procedures instead of individual reel evaluation. Product catalogs increasingly grouped multiple brands under unified distributor listings in retail environments. The Fluger name remained visible, but no longer represented independent factory ownership. In 1976, corporate restructuring in the sporting goods industry led to consolidation of fishing tackle brands. Financial records from this period show mergers and acquisitions involving multiple outdoor equipment manufacturers. Fluger assets were integrated into larger corporate portfolios, managing fishing and outdoor recreation products. Design teams began sharing components across different brand lines to reduce manufacturing costs. Engineering departments coordinated production standards across multiple factories outside of Akron. The original Akron manufacturing identity was reduced as production shifted to diversified locations. Company archives from later decades show increasing separation between brand identity and physical manufacturing sites. The Fluger name continued as a product label rather than a standalone factory designation. In 1980, global supply chains in fishing equipment production expanded beyond North America. Manufacturing data shows increased outsourcing of reel components to international production facilities. Precision metal parts were increasingly produced using overseas machining operations with lower labor costs. Final assembly often occurred in centralized distribution facilities rather than original factory locations. Product development focused on cost efficiency while maintaining recognizable legacy designs, such as the Medalist. Consumer catalogs emphasized affordability and reliability instead of engineering novelty. Retail competition intensified as multiple brands shared similar mechanical systems and materials. Fluger products maintained market presence through consistent design, familiarity, rather than radical innovation. In 2000, the Fluger brand became part of a larger, consolidated fishing equipment corporation in the United States. Corporate ownership placed the brand under centralized management alongside other fishing tackle companies. Product lines were reorganized to target entry-level and mid-range fishing markets. Engineering updates were applied to existing reel designs rather than introducing entirely new mechanical systems. Digital manufacturing systems improved production consistency across multiple product categories. Distribution expanded through online retail channels and national sporting goods chains. The Medalist lineage continued in updated forms adapted for modern fishing materials and line technologies. Brand identity remained tied to historical reputation rather than factory-based innovation. In 2010, global fishing equipment production relied heavily on automated machining and international assembly networks. Industry data shows widespread use of CNC machining in reel frame production and gear manufacturing. Modern Fluiger reels incorporated lightweight alloys and sealed drag systems for freshwater and saltwater use. Product specifications emphasized corrosion resistance ratings and drag force measurements in pounds. Retail packaging highlighted performance metrics instead of historical manufacturing origin. Consumer reviews frequently referenced durability and affordability in comparison to higher-priced competitors. The Medalist name remained in circulation as a heritage product line within updated catalogue offerings. Engineering design teams continued refining existing reel structures rather than replacing them entirely. In 2026, Fluegger products remain present in global fishing markets under consolidated outdoor recreation ownership. Current product catalogues list spinning reels, bait casters, and fly reels under the Fluegger brand name. Distribution networks include major online retailers and international sporting goods outlets. Design elements still reference early 20th century mechanical principles such as controlled spool rotation and balanced drag systems. Historical records of Ernest F. Fluegger and Ernest Abe Fluegger remain preserved in company archives and patent databases. The legacy of early Akron manufacturing continues through updated products that maintain recognizable structural lineage. The story of invention gives way to the continuation of a brand operating inside a global industrial system. The documentary ends here. Subscribe and like the video only if you enjoyed this story about how Fluegger's fishing empire changed over time. In December 1943, Yutaka Urakami founded a die casting company in Fuchu, Hiroshima. A man who had never heard the words die casting until 1 week before he committed to building a company around it. By 1975, Ryobi stood beside Daiwa and Shimano as one of Japan's 3 largest fishing tackle brands. In America, Ryobi had already built 1 million spinning reels for Zebco alone. Then Japan's economy collapsed. In 2000, Ryobi sold the fishing division and walked away. Today, nobody remembers. The company before the reels. In December 1943, Yutaka Urakami established Ryobi Seisakusho Company Limited in Fuchu, Hiroshima, Japan. He set up production inside a converted soy sauce warehouse. The company made one thing: precision die-cast metal components. Die casting is a manufacturing process where molten metal is forced into a mold under high pressure to create complex, accurate shapes at high speed. Ryobi's customers were automakers and electronics manufacturers. There were no fishing reels, no power tools, no golf clubs, just metal parts, made fast, made precisely. Through the 1950s and the 1960s, Ryobi expanded. In 1961, the company listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. That same year, it began manufacturing offset printing presses. In 1968, it entered the power tools business. In 1973, the company dropped the Seisakusho name entirely and became Ryobi Limited. Fishing tackle and golfing goods followed. Those consumer products did something that years of industrial die casting never could. They put the Ryobi name in front of everyday people. The American fishing market in the 1970s. Across the Pacific, American fishing was changing fast. By the early 1970s, most entry-level and mid-priced fishing reels sold in the United States, including reels sold under American brand names, were being manufactured in Japan. Japanese factories were cheaper, faster, and increasingly more precise than their American counterparts. By the late 1970s, Japanese companies were not just making budget reels, they were making the best reels in the world. 3 Japanese names dominated that market: Daiwa, Shimano, and Ryobi. 2 of those names are still on shelves in every American tackle shop today. The third is not. Ryobi's early foothold in America. Ryobi did not walk into the American market cold. Through the early 1970s, Ryobi manufactured reels for other companies, most importantly for Zebco. Zebco was, and still is, one of the most recognized fishing reel brands in the United States. Millions of Americans learned to fish on a Zebco. Getting a manufacturing contract with Zebco meant your reels were already in American hands. Zebco was founded in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1949. The company made spin cast reels, a type of fishing reel enclosed in a closed-face housing that prevented the line from tangling. They were simple, they were cheap, they were nearly impossible to mess up. For decades, the brand sat at the center of American recreational fishing. By the early 1970s, Zebco needed more reels than its domestic operations could supply. American manufacturing was expensive, Japanese manufacturing was precise, fast, and affordable. Zebco looked across the Pacific and found Ryobi. In 1972, Ryobi signed a contract to manufacture 1 million spinning reels for Zebco. The reels were the XB, XBL, XR, and XRL series. Spinning reels are open-face reels where the line wraps around a fixed spool. They are easier to cast than bait casting reels and far more common among everyday anglers. Zebco needed them in volume. Ryobi delivered 1 million reels. That number mattered for reasons beyond the money. Building 1 million reels for the most recognized fishing brand in America meant Ryobi understood exactly what American anglers were buying, how they used gear, and what they expected from a reel. They learned the market by building for it. When Ryobi completed the contract, they did something unexpected. They manufactured 4 additional 45XBL reels, plated them entirely in gold, and gifted them to Zebco. It was a gesture of appreciation and a signal that Ryobi took the relationship seriously. In 1977, Ryobi entered the United States market under its own name, and the 12 years that followed would produce 148 spinning reels across roughly 30 different series. The Zebco years were over, the Ryobi years were beginning. Lou Childre and the reel that changed everything. To understand what happened next, you need to understand Lou Childre. Lou Childre grew up along the Gulf Coast of Alabama. He was not an engineer by training. He was a fisherman who refused to accept that the tools available were good enough. In the late 1960s, Childre traveled to Japan. He was looking for better bamboo for his fishing poles. He found the bamboo, and he also found a circle of Japanese manufacturers who were deeply interested in the American fishing market. One of those manufacturers was Shimano. Shimano was founded in 1921 by Shozaburo Shimano in Sakai City, Osaka. It started as a bicycle freewheel manufacturer. A freewheel is the small ratcheting mechanism on a bicycle's rear wheel that allows the wheel to spin freely when you stop pedaling. Shimano built them with precision. That precision engineering, honed over decades of bicycle work, was exactly what Childre needed to build a better reel. Together, Childre and Shimano produced the Lew's Speed Spool, BB1. The year was 1973. Before the Speed Spool, bait casting reels were round. They were bulky, They sat awkwardly in the hand, forced the angler to grip the rod and reel separately, and required constant thumb pressure to control the line during a cast. Backlash, the tangled bird's nest of line that results when the spool spins faster than the line leaves it, was a constant problem. Bait casting reels required skill. Most casual anglers avoided them entirely. The speed spool changed that. It introduced 4 features the industry had never seen combined in a single bait casting reel. The first was a low-profile body design, a flat teardrop shape that sat in the palm of the hand instead of sitting on top of it. The second was a narrow spool, which reduced the weight that had to accelerate during a cast and made the reel faster. The third was a fully disengaging level wind, a guide that normally moved back and forth across the spool during retrieval and caused friction during the cast. On the speed spool, that guide disengaged completely at the moment of the cast, removing the friction entirely. The fourth was a no-knob palming side cover, a smooth plate on the left side of the reel that could be held against the palm of the hand for a unified, comfortable grip. Every bait casting reel made today has all 4 of those features. Every single one. The speed spool of 1973 is, in its essential design, the bait casting reel of 2024. By the mid-1970s, the speed spool was spreading through the bass fishing world like a fire through dry grass. Bass fishing in America was exploding. Tournament fishing was growing. Anglers were spending real money on gear, reading tackle magazines, watching fishing shows, and arguing about equipment. The speed spool was the real serious bass anglers wanted. Then, on July 26, 1977, Lou Childre was killed. He was piloting his own seaplane when it crashed. He was 56 years old. He never saw what his reel became. Childre's sons, Craig and Casey, survived the crash. So did his wife, Vivian. The family inherited the Lew's brand and the speed spool, and they inherited a problem. Shimano had been watching the speed spool's success from the inside. They had built the reel. They understood every gear, every bearing, every tolerance. And in 1977, the same year Childre died, Shimano ended its manufacturing relationship with Lou Childre and Sons. Shimano was not walking away from bait casting reels, it was walking toward them under its own name. In 1978, Shimano released the Bantam 100 in the United States. The Bantam 100 was a low-profile bait casting reel. Shimano had spent the previous year sending engineers into the American bass fishing market to study what anglers actually needed. Those engineers watched anglers fish. They measured what they complained about. They identified that the market wanted something smaller, lighter, and more precise than what existed. The Bantam 100 weighed 7.4 ounces. It had every feature the speed spool had introduced in 1973. It could handle 6-pound line, which the speed spool could not do reliably. It cast further and more accurately than competing reels. It was an immediate success. The Childre family needed a new manufacturer, and fast. They turned to Ryobi. Ryobi had been in the background of this entire story. They had spent years building Zebco's spinning reels. They understood American anglers. They had the factory capacity. They had the precision manufacturing capability Childre needed. The deal was made. Ryobi took over production of the Lew's speed spool. That single contract did something the Zebco years never could. Building the Zebco reels had taught Ryobi what American anglers bought. Building the speed spool taught Ryobi what the best reel in America actually was. Gear tooth by gear tooth, bearing by bearing, tolerance by tolerance. The problem nobody wanted to say out loud. By 1979, Ryobi had everything positioned correctly. They had the Zebco relationship behind them. They had the speed spool contract running. They had their own branded reel line launching across 4 continents. They had distribution in the United States, Europe, Australia, and South America. On paper, Ryobi looked like a company on the way up. Then the returns started coming in. In 1979, Ryobi released the AD 6000, their first bait casting reel sold under the Ryobi name. Bait casting reels, as a category, are precision instruments. A bait casting reel contains a rotating spool driven by a gear system, controlled by a drag mechanism and released by a thumb bar. Every component has to work in exact coordination with every other component. When one part fails, the reel fails completely. It does not slow down, it does not degrade gracefully, it stops working. Within 12 months of the AD6000 reaching American tackle shops, too many of them were coming back. The failure point was specific. The main gear shaft, the central rotating component that drives the entire retrieve mechanism, was breaking away from the side plate it was attached to. The side plate is the wall of the reel body. The gear shaft has to be fixed to it rigidly and permanently. In the AD6000, that connection had been made with heat glue or epoxy, not welding, not mechanical fastening, adhesive. Normal fishing pressure broke it. An angler would hook a fish, apply drag, crank the handle, and the gear shaft would pull free. The reel would seize, the fish would be gone. The angler would be standing on a bank or in a boat holding a reel that no longer functioned, wondering what they had spent their money on. This was not a minor inconvenience. A bait casting reel in 1979 cost between $40 and $60. In today's money, that is between $160 and $240. American anglers spending that kind of money expected a product that could handle a fish, not one that broke on contact with the job it was designed to do. The same structural failure was showing up on the speed spool reels Ryobi was manufacturing for Lou Children Sons. The problem was not limited to Ryobi's own brand. It was a manufacturing quality issue that ran through their entire casting reel production at that time. Why it happened before 1978, Ryobi had been making cheap spinning reels for the Japanese domestic market. Spinning reels and bait casting reels are fundamentally different products. A spinning reel has a fixed spool, and the line peels off the front of the spool in loops. The mechanical stresses inside a spinning reel are relatively modest. A bait casting reel has a rotating spool. During a cast, that spool can spin at thousands of revolutions per minute. The mechanical forces inside a bait casting reel, especially when a large fish applies sudden load, are significantly higher. Ryobi's experience before 1978 was almost entirely in spinning reels for a domestic market that was not demanding. Japanese domestic fishing tackle at that time was inexpensive, functional, and built to modest standards. It did not need to withstand the sustained pressure of American bass fishing, where tournament anglers were fishing 8 hours a day, every day of tournament season, pulling bass out of heavy cover on heavy line. When Ryobi transitioned into bait casting reels, first for Lou Children Sons, then under their own name, they brought manufacturing habits that had never been tested at that level. The adhesive gear shaft connection was a shortcut that worked well enough in light use. It did not work in the American market. The quality assurance processes that should have caught this before the reels reached stores did not catch it. The reels shipped. The reels failed. The returns arrived. In the tackle industry, a product failure leaves a mark that takes years to erase. An angler who buys a $50 reel and watches it break on the first large fish does not give that brand a second chance quietly. They tell the tackle shop owner. The tackle shop owner tells the next 10 customers who ask about that brand. Word moves fast in a community built around shared knowledge and trusted equipment. The competition that wouldn't wait. While Ryobi was managing quality failures, Shimano and Daiwa were not standing still. Shimano had released the Bantam 100 in the United States in 1978. That reel weighed 7.4 ounces and handled 6-pound line with a reliability that the speed spool had never achieved. It was an immediate success, not just because of what it could do, but because of what Shimano did next. Shimano did not wait. In the years following the Bantam 100, Shimano released a steady sequence of new models, each one building on the last. Each reel incorporated lessons from American field testing. Each reel addressed specific complaints from the previous model. Shimano was not reacting to the market, it was leading it. Daiwa was doing the same thing. In 1979, Daiwa introduced the Procaster. The Procaster was a low-profile bait casting reel featuring a 5.2:1 gear ratio, the ratio describing how many times the spool rotates per turn of the handle, along with a disengaging level wind, a left side palming plate, a power handle, and a light spool for faster spool speeds. The Procaster was not an accident. Daiwa had studied the speed spool the same way Shimano had. They understood what Lou Childre had built in 1973, and they built a direct answer to it. By 1979, the American bait casting market had 3 serious Japanese competitors. Shimano had 1 year of market presence and a reel that anglers trusted. Daiwa had just entered with a precision instrument at a competitive price. Ryobi had a reel with a broken gear shaft and a shelf full of returns. The race was 3 competitors wide. 2 of them were pulling ahead before Ryobi had finished its first lap. 1988, the exit. Nobody announced. Through the early and mid-1980s, Ryobi continued producing reels for the American market. The quality problems with the AD6000 were not permanent. Ryobi corrected the gear shaft issue in subsequent models. Some of their spinning reel lines, particularly the XR and XRL series built for Zebco, were genuinely well regarded by the anglers who used them. Vintage collectors today describe certain Ryobi spinning reels from this period as solid, dependable reels with good build quality. The company was not uniformly bad, it was inconsistent, and inconsistency in a market where trust is everything is almost as damaging as consistent failure. But the window was closing. Shimano and Daiwa were spending the 1980s building the brand equity that would define American bait casting for the next 4 decades. Tournament anglers were fishing Shimano. Tackle shop owners were recommending Shimano and Daiwa. Magazine writers were testing Shimano and Daiwa. The 2 brands were becoming the default answer to the question every American angler eventually asks: what reel should I buy? Ryobi was not in that conversation. In 1988, Ryobi transferred its American fishing tackle operations to Fintech. Fintech was a subsidiary of Berkley. Berkley is one of the largest fishing tackle companies in the United States, primarily known for fishing line, specifically Berkley Trilene, which by the late 1980s was one of the most widely used monofilament fishing lines in the country. Berkley had the distribution network, the retail relationships, and the market reach that Ryobi's fishing division needed. Fintech was Berkley's vehicle for managing acquired or licensed tackle brands. The Ryobi name stayed on the reels, but the engineering decisions, the product direction, and the market positioning were now Fintech's to make. From the moment that transfer happened, the focus shifted. The Fintech-era Ryobi reels moved toward value. Lower price points, simpler construction, a product aimed at the budget end of the market rather than the performance end. The premium positioning that Ryobi had tried to establish with the AD6000 and the speed spool contract was gone. In the American tackle market, price positioning is nearly impossible to reverse. A brand that sells at the budget tier does not move to the premium tier by changing its product. It moves to the premium tier by rebuilding its reputation over years, and that requires sustained investment, consistent quality, and marketing aimed at serious anglers. Fintech made none of those investments under the Ryobi name. Japan, in the 1990s, the larger problem. While Ryobi's American fishing presence was fading quietly under Fintech, the company back in Japan was facing something far more serious. Japan's economy had been expanding aggressively through the 1980s. Japanese companies were investing heavily, buying overseas businesses, building new factories, and expanding into new markets. Ryobi was part of that expansion. The company had moved into power tools, printing presses, golf equipment, and international manufacturing. By 1985, Ryobi had established a die-casting production facility in Shelbyville, Indiana, the first Japanese die-casting manufacturer to build a production base in the United States. Then the bubble burst. Japan's asset bubble, an extreme overvaluation of real estate and stocks driven by years of cheap credit and speculative investment, collapsed between 1991 and 1992. The Nikkei stock index, which had peaked at nearly 39,000 points in December 1989, fell to under 15,000 by August 1992. Real estate values across Japan dropped by 60 to 80% in major cities. Companies that had borrowed heavily against inflated assets suddenly found those assets worth a fraction of their loans. Ryobi had been expanding on the assumption that growth would continue. It did not. The expansion path the company had committed to failed to produce the expected returns. The debt remained. The revenue did not grow fast enough to service it. Through the 1990s, Ryobi's management was under intense pressure to cut costs, eliminate unprofitable divisions, and concentrate the company's resources on its areas of genuine strength. Die casting for the automotive industry was a strength. Power tools were a strength, at least in certain markets. Fishing tackle and golf equipment were not core to the company's industrial identity. They had served their purpose as brand-building consumer products. That purpose had been served. In 2000, Ryobi announced the Sound Management Plan. The plan was direct, cut unprofitable businesses, reduce the workforce, sell overseas power tool divisions, and focus on what the company did best. The fishing tackle division was on the list, so was golf. On September 30th, 2000, Ryobi Limited sold its fishing tackle business to Joshuya Company Limited. The fishing division, that had begun in 1944, built 1 million reels for Zebco, manufactured the speed spool for Lou Children Sons, introduced 148 spinning reel models in the United States, and spent a decade trying to compete with Shimano and Daiwa, was gone. Sold, not shut down, but gone from Ryobi. The date was September 30th, 2000. Joshuya and the handoff. On September 30th, 2000, Ryobi Limited signed the fishing tackle business over to Joshuya Company Limited and walked away permanently. Joshuya was not a manufacturer. That distinction matters. Joshuya was a retail chain, the largest fishing tackle retail chain in Japan. They sold fishing gear. They did not build it. Buying the Ryobi fishing brand gave Joshuya a recognizable name and an existing product catalogue. It did not give them factories, engineers, or the institutional knowledge of how to develop new reels from scratch. What Joshuya had was a brand with 56 years of history behind it. What they needed was someone to actually make the products going forward. For 8 years, the details of how Ryobi branded reels were manufactured and distributed after the sale remained largely unresolved in public-facing documentation. The brand continued to exist. Reels continued to appear under the Ryobi name. But the original manufacturer, Ryobi Limited, the Hiroshima Die Casting Company, founded in a soy sauce warehouse in 1943, had formally and completely severed its connection to all of it. In February 2011, Ryobi Limited ended after-sales service for every Ryobi branded fishing reel manufactured before September 2000. If an angler had a Ryobi reel made by the original company and it needed a repair part or a warranty service, Ryobi Limited would no longer help. The door closed completely. Weihai Ryobi. The name moves to China. In November 2008, Joshuya reached an agreement with Weihai Ryobi International Trading Co. Limited. Weihai is a city on the eastern tip of Shandong Province in China, on the coast of the Yellow Sea. Over the past 3 decades, Weihai has become one of the most concentrated fishing tackle manufacturing regions on Earth. Dozens of factories in and around the city produce rods, reels, lures, and line for brands sold across Asia, Europe, Australia, and North America. The combination of low manufacturing costs, a large skilled workforce, and established supply chains for tackle components has made Weihai the production centre for a significant portion of the world's fishing gear. The agreement authorised Weihai Ryobi International to manufacture, sell and operate Ryobi fishing tackle products worldwide, with one exception, Japan. Inside Japan, the Ryobi fishing brand remained under Joshuya's direct control. Everywhere else in the world, Weihai Ryobi International owned the rights to put the Ryobi name on a fishing reel. Ryobi Limited published a formal clarification on its official website. The statement was clear: Ryobi Limited is no longer involved in the production, sales or after-sales service of Ryobi branded fishing gear. The company did not want any confusion. They wanted it on record that the green-handled power tools and the Ryobi fishing reels sold globally were two entirely separate operations, with no shared management, no shared engineering, and no shared ownership. The Ryobi name on a fishing reel sold in Australia, Southeast Asia, or Europe today belongs to a Chinese manufacturer operating under a license from a Japanese retail chain. The Hiroshima company that started it is not involved at all. What the brand became without the company. The separation of the Ryobi name from Ryobi Limited produced two very different outcomes. On the power tools side, the outcome was extraordinary. Tektronic Industries, a manufacturing company based in Hong Kong, acquired Ryobi Limited's North American power tools business in August 2000. The same month Ryobi walked away from fishing tackle, it handed its American power tool business to TTI. TTI then acquired Ryobi's European power tools business in August 2001. In March 2002, TTI acquired Ryobi's Australian and New Zealand operations. TTI took the Ryobi power tool brand and built it into one of the best-selling cordless tool lines in the world. The Ryobi 18-volt 1 Plus system, a platform where a single battery works across hundreds of different tools, was introduced in 1996 and became the product line that defined the brand's identity for the next 3 decades. Today, Ryobi power tools are sold in every Home Depot in the United States. The brand is synonymous with affordable, reliable cordless tools for homeowners and do-it-yourself users. Hundreds of millions of people know the name Ryobi. Almost none of them associate it with fishing. On the fishing side, the outcome was quieter. Weihai Ryobi International continued producing reels under the Ryobi name for markets across Southeast Asia, Australia, Eastern Europe, and parts of Africa. The reels competed in the value and mid-range segments of those markets. They were functional, affordable, and aimed at anglers who needed reliable gear without paying premium prices. The brand remained active, just not in the United States, and not in the premium segment where Ryobi had once tried to establish itself alongside Shimano and Daiwa. The Ryobi fishing brand today is not a failed brand. It sells reels, it has anglers who use and recommend it in its active markets, but it is not the brand that once stood beside Daiwa and Shimano at the top of Japanese fishing tackle. That version of the brand is gone. What the reels left behind. The anglers who actually used Ryobi reels during the original run, the reels built in Hiroshima and shipped to American tackle shops between 1977 and 1988, remember them differently than the brand's exit from the market might suggest. The XR and XRL series built for Zebco in the early to mid-1970s were well regarded. Anglers who used them described them as solid, dependable spinning reels for the price. The Ryobi EX300, a spinning reel manufactured in Japan in the 1980s, is today described by vintage tackle collectors as a quality piece of equipment, a reel with 2 spare spools, a folding handle, front drag adjustment, and the ability to handle both heavy, freshwater, and light saltwater fishing. Collectors who find one in original condition consider it worth keeping. Not every Ryobi reel from the American run was a failure. Some of them were genuinely good products. The problem was never that Ryobi was incapable of building good reels. The problem was that they were inconsistent. And in a market where Shimano and Daiwa were building consistent, improving products year after year, inconsistency was a losing position. Ryobi also discontinued their freshwater reels for the American market, while continuing to produce saltwater reels. The freshwater market, bass fishing, trout fishing, walleye fishing, the categories where the largest number of American recreational anglers spent their money, was the market Ryobi left. It was also the market where Shimano and Daiwa built their American dominance, where Ryobi Limited is today. Ryobi Limited still exists. The company is headquartered in Fuchu, Hiroshima, the same city where Yutaka Urakami set up a die casting operation in a converted soy sauce warehouse in December 1943. It is publicly traded on the Tokyo Stock Exchange under the ticker TYO 5851. Its current products are die-cast components for the automotive industry, builders' hardware, and printing equipment. Power tools were transferred to the Kyocera Group in 2018. Fishing tackle has not appeared on the company's product list since September 30th, 2000. The company Urakami founded survived. It shed the consumer businesses that made its name recognizable and returned to the industrial work it was built around. Die casting for automobiles, hardware for buildings, precision components for machines that most people will never see. The fishing reel division that ran from 1944 to 2000, 56 years of tackle production, 1 million reels for Zebco, a decade of speed spool manufacturing, 148 spinning reel models in the American market, accounts for none of Ryobi Limited's current business. It is a chapter the company has formally closed, the door sealed with a corporate statement on a website and a final service cut-off date of February 2011. The resolution. The story of Ryobi Reels is not a story about a company that was destroyed. It is a story about a company that built something real, lost its footing against stronger competition, and made a calculated decision to stop competing rather than continue bleeding resources in a market it could not win. Ryobi stood beside Daiwa and Shimano in Japan. It built 1 million reels for the most recognized fishing brand in America. It manufactured the reel that defined the shape of every bait casting reel sold today. Then it returned broken reels, missed the window Shimano was climbing through, handed its American identity to a budget-focused subsidiary, watched Japan's economy collapse, and sold the division to a retail chain on the last day of September 2000. The brand still exists, the reels are still being sold, but the company that built them, the Hiroshima die caster that learned a new industry, crossed the Pacific and spent 12 years competing in the world's most demanding fishing market, has been out of the fishing business for 25 years. Most American anglers never noticed it left. If this video gave you something you did not know before, a like and a subscribe, only if you genuinely found value in it, will help more people find stories like this one. In 1875, two brothers in Berlin built one of the greatest fishing tackle companies on earth. For over a century, their quick spinning reel was the gold standard. It was sold in every country where people fished, worn as a badge of quality by anglers across Europe and America. Then in 1995, the founding family sold the company. Within 6 years, it was bankrupt. How does a 120-year dynasty collapse in less than a decade? Berlin, 1875. In 1875, two brothers opened a small shop in Berlin. Oskar Ziegenspeck and Fritz Ziegenspeck sold ironware, sports equipment, and fishing gear. They made nothing themselves, not yet, but demand for fishing tackle was growing, and the brothers noticed. They began producing their own equipment. By 1892, their products had already won gold medals at 2 trade exhibitions, one in Nuremberg, one in Hanover. By 1902, the operation had grown too large to run as a simple shop. The brothers restructured the business and renamed it Deutsche Angelgeräte Manufaktur, DAM, German Fishing Equipment Manufacturers. A new owner, a new era. In 1909, a merchant named Otto Kunze walked into the company. He already had business connections. In England, France, America, Russia and Japan, Fritz Ziegenspeck was aging. He stepped back. Kunze took over as sole owner and injected the kind of international ambition the company had never had before. Kunze steered DAM through World War I without losing the business. Through the 1920s and into the 1930s, he expanded it further, alongside his son, Helmuth Kunze, the product that changed everything. In 1937, DAM introduced 2 things that would define the company for the next century. The first was the quick reel. A spinning reel is a type of fishing reel where the spool sits fixed on the rod. The line peels off the front during a cast and is retrieved by a rotating bail arm. Before fixed spool reels became widespread, most anglers used multiplier reels. They were heavier, harder to cast, and far less forgiving for beginners. The Quick was DAM's answer. It was the first fixed spool spinning reel ever manufactured in Germany. The second was Damil, the world's first synthetic branded fishing line, patented at the German Patent Bureau in 1940. Both products became global standards. War and rebuilding. By the late 1930s, DAM employed over 350 workers and had opened a second facility in Hohlfeld, Bavaria, to keep up with demand. Then World War II arrived. Production stopped in 1943. Otto Kunze died that same year, before the war ended. The Berlin factory was destroyed. Helmuth Kunze inherited a company in ruins. On November 11, 1955, DAM opened a brand new purpose-built factory in Gunzenhausen, Bavaria, and that factory became the company's permanent headquarters. The rebuild was complete. The real rise was just beginning. The world of fishing tackle in the 1950s. To understand what DAM built, you first need to understand what the fishing tackle world looked like before they dominated it. In the 1950s, spinning reels were still a relatively new technology. Most serious anglers used multiplier reels. A multiplier reel is a reel where the spool rotates during the cast. Line pays out as the spool spins. The faster the cast, the faster the spool spins. Get the tension wrong and the line piles up on itself in a tangled mess. It required skill, practice, and patience. Beginners hated them. The fixed spool spinning reel solved that problem. The spool stays still during the cast. The line simply peels off the front. A rotating bail arm wraps the line back onto the spool during the retrieve. It was simpler. It was more forgiving. And in the 1950s, it was exploding in popularity across Europe and America. Every major fishing country had a manufacturer trying to dominate it. France had the Mitchell, a reel made by a company in Cluses that became one of the most popular spinning reels ever produced. Sweden had ABU Garcia and its Cardinal series. Italy had the Alcedo and the Delfino. Germany had DAM Quick, the Big Three. By the late 1950s, 3 companies had separated themselves from the rest of the field. Mitchell from France, ABU Garcia from Sweden, and DAM from West Germany. These were the 3 brands that could be found in tackle shops on every continent where people fished. Not regional names, not niche products. Global standards. Each had a different strength. ABU Garcia built the most precise, most consistent reels. Their quality control was exceptional. Mitchell built reliable, mid-range reels that sold in enormous volumes and became the everyday choice for millions of casual anglers. DAM led in design innovation. Their engineering teams introduced new mechanical concepts faster than either competitor. But that innovation came at a cost. DAM's fit and finish was the weakest of the three. To keep prices competitive, corners were occasionally cut in the final assembly stage, and some reels left the factory with minor imperfections. Despite that, the Quick name carried enormous weight. In fishing shops across Western Europe, the words "Made in West Germany" on the side of a reel meant something. It meant the gears were cut precisely. It meant the housing was machined from real metal. It meant the reel would still be working in 20 years. How DAM built its premium reels. The engineering at the heart of the Quick reels deserves explanation, because it was genuinely unusual. Most spinning reels use a standard gear system, where the handle turns a drive gear, and that drive gear turns a pinion gear, which rotates the bail arm. It is a simple system, and it is cheap to build, but it produces some vibration and resistance in the retrieve. DAM built their premium reels differently. They used a worm gear drive. In a worm gear system, the drive gear sits on top of the pinion and drives it through a sliding, spiral-style motion. The result is an exceptionally smooth retrieve, noticeably smoother than standard gear systems. DAM had been building premium reels on this system since 1954, starting with the Quick Super 270. That smoothness became the defining physical experience of using a Quick reel. Anglers who picked one up for the first time often described the retrieve as unlike anything they had felt before. That reputation spread by word of mouth across tackle shops, fishing clubs, and riverbanks across Europe and North America. The product line expands. Through the 1960s and into the 1970s, DAM built out a full product range around the Quick reel platform. In 1973, DAM became the first manufacturer in Europe to offer retailers fishing rods made entirely from carbon fibre. These rods were unveiled at Spoga, a major international sporting goods trade fair held in Cologne, Germany. Carbon fibre rods were lighter and more sensitive than fiberglass, and they transmitted the feel of a fish on the line more directly to the angler's hand. DAM introduced them to the European market before any competitor. The FZ lure range followed. FZ spinners and spoons were metal fishing lures, blades and weighted bodies designed to spin through the water and attract predatory fish like pike and perch. They sold in the millions. Tackle shops across Europe stocked them as a standard item. The FZ name became so well known that competing manufacturers began producing imitation designs. The Damil fishing line, first patented in 1940, continued to grow into one of the most trusted line brands in Europe. Anglers who fished with Quick reels bought Damil line to spool onto them. The two products reinforced each other. By the mid-1970s, DAM was not just a reel company, it was a complete fishing tackle ecosystem. The skirted spool generation. In 1977, DAM introduced a new family of spinning reels built around a skirted spool design. A skirted spool is a spool with an extended lower section, the skirt, that wraps down around the rotor. This design prevents line from slipping behind the spool, which was a common frustration with older open-face designs. It was a meaningful improvement for everyday anglers. The 1977 series launched first in sizes 3000 and 4000. In 1978, DAM added the 1000, 1400, 2000 and the large 5000 to complete the range. The range was discontinued less than 2 years later. DAM's engineers had identified further improvements to make. In 1980, a completely new generation replaced it. The new series comprised 6 reels: the 1001, 1401, 2001, 3001, 4001, and the 5001, the Quick 5001, the reel that changed big game fishing. The 5001 deserves its own section. It earned it. To understand why the 5001 mattered, you need to understand what big game saltwater fishing looked like in 1980. Big game fishing meant targeting large, powerful ocean fish, species like tuna, marlin, and large sharks. These fish run hard and fast when hooked. They pull with enormous force. A reel used to fight them needs a drag system that can apply consistent pressure over a long fight without overheating, seizing, or failing. It needs gears strong enough to handle that load without stripping. And it needs to do all of this while holding enough line to let a fish make a long run without emptying the spool. In 1980, the accepted tool for this kind of fishing was the conventional reel, also called a multiplier reel. Conventional reels are larger, heavier reels where the spool rotates during both the cast and the retrieve. They had been built for big game fishing for decades. Penn, a Philadelphia-based company, founded in 1932, made the most respected conventional reels in the world for this purpose. Their international series was the Standard. Spinning reels were considered unsuitable for serious big game work. They were lighter. Their drag systems were considered less powerful. Their gears were not built for sustained heavy loads. Going after a fish over 50 kilograms with a spinning reel was, in most fishing circles, considered unrealistic. The DAM Quick 5001 challenged that assumption directly. The 5001 was built with precision cut phosphor bronze and steel gears, not the softer alloys used in most spinning reels of the era. Phosphor bronze is a metal alloy known for its strength, its resistance to wear, and its ability to run smoothly under load. Pairing it with steel gears gave the 5001 a drivetrain that could sustain the kind of pressure normally reserved for conventional reels. The reel also featured a disc drag system, a drag design that uses flat circular discs to apply braking pressure to the spool rather than simple washers. Disc drags are more consistent. They deliver smoother, more adjustable resistance. They run cooler under sustained load. The result was a spinning reel that could legitimately be used to fight large saltwater fish. Anglers who used the 5001 found they could go after species that no spinning reel had previously been expected to handle. It became known in the fishing world as the godfather of big game spinning reels, the first spinning reel that genuinely crossed into territory that had belonged exclusively to conventional reels for decades. Presentation mattered. DAM understood that the 5001 was not just a product, it was a statement. Every 5001 shipped with a document, DAM, called a Roland Pass, a reel passport. The passport was a small booklet. On one side it read, Bundesrepublik Deutschland, Federal Republic of Germany. On the other side, it listed the reel's key features and carried a lifetime guarantee against manufacturing defects. A quality control sticker was applied directly to the reel's foot at the factory before it left Gunzenhausen. No other mass-market spinning reel manufacturer offered anything like this at the time. It was a direct message to every angler who picked one up. This reel was made by people who stood behind their work. The Champion casting reel, taking the fight to ABU. In the early 1970s, DAM decided to move beyond spinning reels entirely and enter the bait casting reel market. A bait casting reel, also called a casting reel or multiplier reel, sits on top of the rod rather than below it. The spool rotates during the cast, which allows for greater casting accuracy and is preferred by bass fishermen and other anglers who need to place lures precisely. The dominant brand in this category was ABU Garcia, a Swedish company whose Ambassador series had become the gold standard for casting reels worldwide. DAM launched the Champion series to compete directly with the Ambassador. The Champion 700 and 700B were sized to match the ABU 5000 and 5500. The Champion 800 and 800B were sized to match the ABU 6000 and 6500. The B series models ran at a gear ratio of 4.7 to 1. The standard black models ran at a gear ratio of 3.8 to 1. The Champions sold for roughly half the price of a comparable Ambassadeur. They were built to the same tough German standards as the quick spinning reels. The similarity between the two brands' engineering was so close that the fishing community circulated a rumour that certain internal gears from the Champions series could be swapped directly into an ABU Ambassadeur, and vice versa. In 1983, DAM restructured the quick spinning reel lineup again. The 1401, 2001, and 3001 models were discontinued. 3 new models were introduced, the 1202, 2002, and 3002, which featured a new double-skirted plastic spool design. The older metal spool models, the 1001, 4001, and 5001, remained in production unchanged. The Kuntz legacy. Through all of this, the Kunze family remained in charge. Helmuth Kunze, who had rebuilt the company from rubble after World War II, died in 1967 after a long illness. His sons, Lutz Kunze and Rupert Kunze, took over the business. They ran it the same way their father had, with a focus on engineering quality, slow and deliberate product development, and a deep resistance to cutting corners on the products that carried the Quick name. Under Lutz and Rupert, DAM reached the absolute peak of its market position. Between the 1970s and the early 1990s, the company covered nearly every category in fishing tackle, reels, carbon fibre rods, synthetic lines, metal lures, and accessories. They had their own sales subsidiaries in every major Western European country. They were the #1 fishing tackle manufacturer in Europe. For more than 50 years, the Quick reel had been continuously improved. DAM invested heavily in research and development. The product got better every decade, but in 1995, Lutz and Rupert Kuntz were getting old. Neither had a successor ready to take over the business. They made a decision, and that decision ended everything the family had spent 120 years building: Japan in the 1950s. To understand what hit DAM, you need to understand where Japan stood in the global manufacturing world in the 1950s. After World War II, Japan was rebuilding from almost nothing. Its industrial cities had been bombed, its economy was devastated. The country needed export income desperately, and the fastest path to earning it was producing goods cheaply enough that foreign buyers would choose Japanese products over their own domestic alternatives. In the 1950s, made in Japan meant one thing to most Western consumers: cheap. Japanese goods were seen as low-quality imitations: transistor radios, plastic toys, inexpensive textiles. The reputation was so consistent that DAM itself had been sourcing its budget reel lines from Japanese manufacturers for years, because Japanese labour costs were low enough to make the economics work on entry-level products. Nobody in the fishing tackle industry looked at Japan in 1955 and saw a threat. That was a mistake. Daiwa is born. In 1955, an engineer named Yoshio Matsui founded a small manufacturing operation in Tokyo called Matsui Manufacturing. Matsui had one focus: spinning reels for export. He was not trying to serve the Japanese domestic market. He was studying what Western anglers wanted and building products designed to reach them. In 1958, the company was formally incorporated as Daiwa Precision Works Corporation, Daiwa Seiko. From the very beginning, Daiwa was an export business built on precision engineering. Daiwa's early reels were not remarkable. They were competent, affordable, and reliable. But the company's engineers were learning fast. Every product generation was lighter, smoother, and more refined than the one before it. Daiwa was not trying to beat DAM in craftsmanship. It was trying to beat DAM in value, and then close the craftsmanship gap before anyone noticed. The new rules of the market. Through the late 1970s and into the 1980s, the fishing tackle market began to change in ways that DAM was not prepared for. The first change was weight. In the 1960s and early 1970s, weight was not a primary concern for most anglers. A reel was a tool. If it was well made and smooth, its weight was acceptable. DAM's all-metal construction, machined aluminium housings, steel gears, solid metal spools, was considered a feature. Heavy meant solid, heavy meant durable, heavy meant German engineering. By the late 1970s, that perception had shifted. Anglers who fished for hours at a time began to notice fatigue. Tackle manufacturers began competing en masse. Shimano and Daiwa both invested in reducing the weight of their reels without sacrificing strength. Daiwa, in particular, became a pioneer in applying new materials to reel construction. In 1979, Daiwa became the first manufacturer in the world to incorporate graphite into both reel bodies and rotors. Graphite, also called carbon fiber composite, is significantly lighter than aluminium while maintaining substantial strength. A graphite-bodied reel could weigh 30 to 40% less than an equivalent all-metal reel. DAM's quick reels were heavier than their Japanese competitors. That gap widened every year. The ball bearing race. The second change was internal smoothness and the marketing around it. Older spinning reels, including the Quick series, typically ran on a single ball bearing. A ball bearing is a circular housing packed with small metal balls that reduces friction between moving parts. One bearing is enough to produce a smooth retrieve in a well-made reel. The Quick reels proved this. Anglers who used them consistently noted how smoothly they operated despite having only a single bearing. But Shimano and Daiwa turned ball bearing count into a marketing battleground. Through the 1980s, their reel catalogues began advertising 2 bearings, then 3, then 4. By the late 1980s, mid-range Japanese reels were advertising 5 and 6 ball bearings. The marketing message was simple. More bearings meant a smoother reel. This was not entirely accurate. A reel with 6 cheaply made bearings can perform worse than a reel with 1 precision-made bearing. But the message resonated with consumers who could not feel the difference in a shop. Japanese reels were advertising higher bearing counts at lower prices. DAM's single-bearing quick reels looked, on paper, like inferior products, regardless of how they actually performed. DAM did not respond aggressively. They did not launch a marketing campaign. They did not engineer a multi-bearing version of the Quicklime at speed. The company that had led in design innovation for 3 decades was moving slowly at exactly the moment the market demanded urgency. The Champion's fatal flaw. While DAM's spinning reels were losing ground to Japanese competition, its Champion casting reel series was facing a separate, self-inflicted crisis in the American market. Bass fishing in the United States was booming in the 1970s and the 1980s. Bass tournaments were attracting large entry fields and serious prize money. Bass anglers were spending more on tackle than any previous generation. Bait casting reels were the tool of choice for this market, and the ABU Garcia Ambassadeur was the dominant product. The Champion series had entered this market with a genuine price advantage. At roughly half the price of a comparable Ambassadeur, the Champion offered similar performance at a much lower cost. American bass anglers and tackle shop owners initially responded well. Then a specific design flaw became impossible to ignore. The free spool button on the Champion reels was positioned on the side of the reel body. When an angler strapped their rod to the deck of a bass boat and drove across a lake, the vibration and pressure from the rod holder would sometimes press the free spool button inward. The reel would slip into free spool without the angler knowing. As the boat accelerated, the line would begin to pay out. In the best case, the bait would fly out of the rod holder and hit the water, creating a tangled mess on the spool. In the worst case, the line stripped off entirely, leaving the angler with nothing. This was not a theoretical problem. It happened regularly. Tackle shop staff reported it. Tournament anglers reported it. By the mid-1980s, Champion reels that were more than 5 years old were sitting unsold in reel cases at tackle shops. Staff could not give them away. DAM eventually corrected the flaw. In the late 1980s, redesigned Champion models appeared with the free spool button moved to the back of the reel body, where accidental depression was far less likely. The fix worked mechanically, but the American bass fishing market had already moved on. By the time the corrected models appeared, Shimano had introduced the Bantam series. Daiwa had established its own casting reel lineup. Lew's, Zebco Quantum and Ryobi were all advertising heavily. A review of major American fishing magazines from this period reveals something stark. Every one of those competing brands was running regular advertisements. DAM Quick was absent, entirely absent. The company had either stopped advertising in the US market or pulled back so severely that it had effectively vanished from the American consumer's awareness. Manufacturing leaves Germany. The most telling sign of DAM's declining position was not a sales figure or a magazine advertisement. It was a label on the bottom of a reel. The Champion 700B, the casting reel DAM had built in West Germany since the early 1970s and stamped with German engineering credentials, began appearing in a new version in the late 1980s. The free spool button had moved to the back. The design change was visible, but there was something else different about these later reels. The manufacturing had left Germany. Production had moved to Japan. DAM had spent decades using the words "Made in West Germany" as a selling point. It was stamped on the reel passport of the Quick 5001. It was pressed into the housing of the Quick Standard. It was the foundation of the brand's entire value proposition. German manufacturing meant German quality. That was the deal. When the Champion began being made in Japan, that deal began to unravel. Europe holds, but only just. It would be inaccurate to say DAM collapsed in the 1980s. They did not. In the European freshwater fishing market, their home market, the quick spinning reels remained a serious choice throughout the decade. Pike anglers in the Netherlands, trout fishermen in Germany, perch anglers across Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. These anglers knew the quick reels from experience, not advertising. They had used them for years. They trusted them. The Quick 5001 continued to attract devoted users among saltwater surf casters and big game anglers who valued its phosphor bronze and steel drivetrain above anything the Japanese manufacturers were offering in the same size class. For those anglers, the 5001 had no equal, but loyal European freshwater anglers and a dedicated saltwater following were not a growth strategy. They were a rearguard. The global market, the mass consumer market in the United States, in Australia, in emerging fishing markets across Asia, was moving to Shimano and Daiwa at a pace that DAM could not match. What happens when the wrong people own the right brand? The problem with ownership changes in manufacturing companies is specific and predictable. A family that builds a company over generations understands the product at a level that external owners almost never replicate. Helmuth Kuntze had spent decades improving the quick reel. He understood why the worm gear drive produced a smoother retrieve than a standard gear system. He understood why phosphor bronze gears held up under saltwater load. He understood what anglers wanted, because he had spent his life surrounded by people who used the products. Borsu Mishwari understood trading margins. Hagemeyer understood electrical distribution contracts. Neither understood what made a spinning reel worth buying. The result was exactly what observers of these situations would predict. New product lines appeared rapidly and disappeared just as rapidly. The Dura series, the Futura, the Space, the TTX, the AT, the Via Surf, the Original, the ATP, the HPN. Each launch came with enthusiasm. Each line promised a return to quality. Each disappeared within a few years without leaving any mark on the market. Each new ownership phase described the previous one as a turbulent transition period. Each new owner promised stability and a return to greatness. The promises accumulated, the results did not. The 2001 insolvency. After another change of ownership in early 2001, the company filed for insolvency. To understand what insolvency means in practical terms, it means the company could no longer pay its debts as they came due. The money coming in was no longer enough to cover the money going out. A court in Ansbach, Bavaria, formally opened insolvency proceedings under case number 4, IN 9301. The company, that had survived 2 world wars, the division of Germany, and 5 decades of competitive pressure from global manufacturers, had been driven into bankruptcy by 6 years of mismanagement under owners who did not understand what they owned. The Gunzenhausen factory opened with celebration on November 11, 1955, 46 years earlier, was at risk of closing permanently. The rebuild, September 2002, DAM did not disappear. In the months following the insolvency filing, a group of people who had worked with the company for years, long-term foreign customers, export partners, and former employees who knew the brand's value, came together with a specific goal. They wanted to save the name. In September 2002, they formally established the Neue DAM International, New DAM International. It was a reformed company built around the surviving brand assets, the Quick name, the Damiel line, the FZ lures, the Steel Power saltwater range. In November 2003, Lars Svensson Holding ApS joined as a major partner. Lars Svensson Holding was a Danish sporting goods group. It brought capital, distribution infrastructure, and a network of retail relationships across Europe. For the first time since 1995, DAM had an owner with relevant industry experience. In 2015, Svensson Sport, the sporting goods arm of the Svensson Group, formally completed its acquisition of DAM, Neue Deutsche Angelgeräte Manufaktur International. The brand had a stable owner for the first time in 2 decades. What was lost in the transition? The reels that DAM produces today are functional. They are affordable. They serve European freshwater anglers who need a reliable tool for pike fishing, carp fishing, and general spinning applications. The current lineup includes the Impulse, Panthera, Runshift, Darkside, Shadow, Finessa, Impressa, Insider, and Nova series. These reels are built with graphite bodies and rotors. Graphite is lighter than aluminium. It keeps production costs lower. It allows DAM to compete in the mid-market price range, where the majority of European tackle sales occur. They are not the quick reels of the 1960s, 1970s, or 1980s. Those reels had machined aluminium housings, steel and phosphor bronze gears, and a single precision ball bearing that outperformed many modern reels carrying 6. A worm gear drive produced a retrieve smoothness competitors still struggle to match. They were expensive to manufacture. That expense showed in every component. The German manufacturing that defined those reels is gone. Production today is carried out overseas. The Made in West Germany stamp that appeared on the reel foot of every quick reel produced during the golden era no longer exists on any current product. The reels that refused to die. Here is the detail that makes this story unusual. The original German-made quick reels are still in service, not in museums, in use, actively fishing. Anglers who bought Quick 220 reels in the 1960s still use them. Quick 330s purchased in the early 1970s still function as designed. The Quick 5001s, manufactured in Gunzenhausen during the 1980s, are still being used by saltwater anglers who have never found a spinning reel they trust more. Parts are still available, not from DAM, but from private collectors who stockpiled new old stock components decades ago and sell them through eBay and specialist forums. An entire small ecosystem of reel repair specialists exists specifically to service vintage quick reels. A reel manufactured over 50 years ago, serviced with parts sourced from a private collector, still outperforms newer products in the hands of anglers who know what they are using. That is not nostalgia, that is an engineering fact, where DAM stands in 2026. DAM still exists, the name is still on shelves across Europe. The company produces and distributes products under 6 brand names. Quick covers reels across all categories. Mad covers carp fishing equipment. Mad Cat covers catfish fishing. FZ covers predator fishing lures. Steel Power covers marine and saltwater fishing. Daymeel covers fishing lines. The ambition to return to the top of European fishing tackle is stated in the company's current marketing materials. Shimano and Daiwa make that ambition difficult to measure. Shimano recorded revenue of $2.87 billion in 2024. Daiwa, operating through its parent company, Globoride, operates manufacturing facilities in Japan, Thailand, China, and Vietnam. DAM operates with 52 employees. The gap between DAM and the companies that replaced it is not a gap that marketing language will close. The honest summary, what happened to DAM Quick, is not a mystery. A 120-year-old family company, built on precision manufacturing and deep product knowledge, was sold to owners who understood neither. Those owners cycled through the brand for 6 years, launching products that failed and making promises they could not keep, until the company collapsed under the weight of its own debt in 2001. The brand survived, the company survived, in a restructured form, with new ownership, new products, and a scaled-down operation. What did not survive was the thing that made DAM worth caring about in the first place. The factory in Gunzenhausen, producing all-metal reels, with worm gear drives and phosphor bronze gears, stamped with the words "Made in West Germany," shipped with a passport guaranteeing the work for life. That ended in 1995. Everything after is a different story. If you found this worth your time, a like and a subscribe help us make more, only if you enjoyed it.